Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to all of you on Radio Land at home and abroad, on Facebook at YSQFM or at Q95 FM Radio. Please share the live and invite your friends to join the Q family. Be sure to get the latest breaking local, regional, international news and happenings. We do acknowledge you on the other online streaming platforms. This is the Global View on Q, and it's Tuesday, the 28th day of December, and it's just about 7:36 or thereabouts in the studios at Q95 and the big station, and it's the 50th Tuesday of 2021. My name is Sheridan Gregoire, Mr. G. My distinguished guest tonight, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, Dr. Dion George, and Dr. Swinburne Augustine. Our topic is Nature Island, Dominica, the year in review, a conversation. This is what we're having tonight, a very nice conversation. And I hope that every Dominican everywhere had a terrific Christmas season as their circumstances permitted. We are just 3 days away from the end of 2021 and the new year 2022. And our conversation tonight will include the COVID pandemic, the CCG and justice, the whole question of corruption. We'll probably spend a few minutes on that. That's important. And the citizen by investment, or some would say this mono passport selling economy, and certainly the imperative for electoral and campaign finance reforms. I expect our panelists will also look at the economic and the governance crises in the homeland. I'm sure they will tackle a question as to where are we in managing this dreaded coronavirus and its variants? Where is our democracy headed? Is the rule of law still possible, or is it being observed and respected at all? Can Dominica afford integrity legislation? Is our nature island doomed to become a dog-eat-dog society, living on and off each other rather than living with each other and loving each other? Is Dominica's fledgling democracy and the rule of law under threat? Are our electoral laws being blatantly breached? Where are the promised electoral reforms and campaign finance reforms? Is Dominica disrespecting international diplomatic protocols? And what is the role of civil society in mitigating these threats? Are the revelations contained in the Director of Audit's report, 2019 report, are the findings justified? Are the frequent capital projects cost overruns and constant requests for supplementary appropriations a symptom of a much deeper problem? What is that problem, if it is? Are the objectives and projects contained in our national budgets being accomplished from year to year? Can we do better than we are doing now? Certainly in comparison to our neighbors. Crimes, violence, and apparent disrespect for human life appears to be on the rise. Are most Dominicans enjoying any decent standard of living or living quality of life that is satisfactory, given these vast cash resources being generated by this CBI passport program? And what about this notion of resilience and sustainability of our natural environment and our architectural heritage? Are these things gone out the window? When will we begin to honestly engage with our local contractors and the expertise of our diaspora brothers and sisters who help solve crime and unemployment and economic stagnation? Will there be peace, justice, unity, harmony, and well-being of our Afro-Caribbean and Kalinago brothers and sisters before our nature island gets to its 50th anniversary of independence in 2028? Will we see that? Stay tuned to Q95, the big station, for this conversation on our nature island, Dominica, the year in review. As I said before, distinguished guests, Justice Dr. Irving Andre, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, Dr. Dion George, and Dr. Swinburne Augustine. As we always do, we discuss the good, the bad, the ugly, and the dangerous. So we'll examine the way forward after looking into the rear mirror and some of the lessons that we may have learned in 2021. And we will make recommendations about going forward for 2022. All right, so tonight we make these recommendations, and as I always say, no anger, no malice, no personal attacks, no vilification, no divisiveness, just bringing back civility, a caring society, good governance, peace and love, among our Kalinago and Afro-Caribbean brothers and sisters. So wherever you are, in Dominica, in the region, and globally, join this conversation on the Global View and Q and have your say as you do every Tuesday with me, Mr. G, only on Q95, the big station. Thank you to healthcare providers and frontline workers doing their best to keep us safe. Let's follow the protocols and stay in good shape. Now, I want to just get started as I go, always as I go to the Dr. Irving Andre to get the ball rolling. And I'm sure that he has much that he can share with us in this conversation tonight. Dr. Irving Andre, the ball is now in your court.
Well, thank you much for that ball. I hope it is one that could be kicked around to the other players.
Well, you're
Before
a
I
good
start,
soccer player, so you should be able to manage.
let me see how much of a pleasure it is to be among this distinguished group of folks. I'll have a little more to say about them. Lambi, who's there, the engineer, I can't see him, but I know he's here. Your listeners, I hope they had a wonderful Christmas. I hope they had their fill of all that Christmas gives. I know there was some controversy about the delivery or distribution of ham and turkey. I was a little, frankly, concerned, but I should indicate that I did receive an email or I saw something on YouTube in which somebody was saying that in lieu of turkeys, one can make turkey by using a few strips from the humble chicken. And the person said that the name of those parts of the chicken is known simply as B and N. So I'm trying to find out, probably Google what B and N means. Well, it'll take me a little time. So, Mr. G, if you have your smartphone, and I know it's a very smart phone, you can probably tell us where is the problem.
I'll try to Google that. I'll Google that for you.
Also distinct pleasure to be there with Dr. Well, not only Dr. George, but Dr. Thomson, but Dr. Augustine. It's the first time I've had the occasion to be with him on a program. And I'll certainly be listening very attentively to what he has to say about the vaccination for two reasons. One, when you were playing these beautiful songs from Tasha P and Carling XP, Dr. Augustine started to sing. And I should be honest about this, Mr. G, but if I was a judge on that recent singing program you had, I would do the unprecedented thing of giving him first, second, and third, quite
Oh,
frankly, based on the sheer wonderful nature of his voice. The only time that has ever been done, that was immortalized by the Mighty Sparrow in a song called Animal Beauty Competition,
but
where
the
the humble
following year,
judge was the monkey. I can't remember who won the competition,
the
but the
following year, I think Andre won the competition the following year.
well, it must be Andre the Giant, not this one. But the monkey gave one of the contestants first, second, and third. But I cannot remember who the winner is. But again, I will leave it to your smartphone to find us and tell us who it is. But here we are, was the end of the year, alive and well. Those of us who have survived the ravages of the COVID, that is another reason why I'm listening carefully to Dr. Augustine. He is the science man. He knows what we're dealing with. Because again, someone sent me a WhatsApp recipe in terms of the remedy in place of the booster. The person said use a few twigs of zebra, mix it in some milk of magnesia, and put a few drops of pepper from somebody called Mrs. What's the name? Mr. Something. From Mrs. Something's backyard. And that will do the job of the booster. But being the coward that I am, I wait until the program, until Dr. Augustine has informed me and educated me before I decide whether I should go that route. But we're here tonight to speak of the events of this year. A very tumultuous year, a very important year from all perspectives, whether it's with respect to the CCJ, whether it's the respect of the health of governance in Dominica, whether it's respect to our the significance of the COVID and our response to it, whether it's with respect to the meaning of our democracy, the meaning of our constitution, the meaning of our passports and our citizenship, it has been a significant year. With respect to the CCJ, I can indicate, as we all know, that the CCJ has made two very important decisions which impact Dominica in a very fundamental fashion. The first one obviously deals with the whole case of treating. And you will, well, not treating, I'm sorry. Well, that's the second one. The whole question of the propriety of persons of a particular political stripe being charged for alleged violation of the laws, electoral laws of Dominica. And the lower courts had held that they have no jurisdiction. And imagine with me the significance of that decision or the decisions by the High Court judge and the Court of Appeal in that case. Just think of it, that these courts said essentially that they have no jurisdiction to adjudicate an issue which goes to the very heart of the integrity of the electoral process in Dominica. If the court has no jurisdiction, then who has? Who has? Who is the custodian of the process of elections in Dominica if that decision had been allowed to stand? Where would we be? Where would we be? What type of anarchy would result if the message from the court was that, look, irrespective of any alleged violation, don't come to us. There is no recourse. As a local song says, take it like a woman. That would have been the significance of that decision by the High Court judge and the Court of Appeal. But good sense prevailed. The CCJ said no. It defies, it flies in the face of the equality provisions of the Charter. You cannot have two sets of rules, one for the incumbent and one for those in opposition. That would be a recipe for chaos and anarchy. But Mr. G, this was a Pyrrhic victory. It was a Pyrrhic victory because an animal called Nolly Pross stole that victory, that assertion and confirmation and affirmation of the rule of law, and made a mockery of the decision. I'm waiting with bated breath to see if the CCJ will grant leave for that decision to Nolly Pross, which smacked and was inundated and marinated in political partisanship. It will be interesting to see if the CCJ will allow that cynical and capricious decision to stand. Because again, it's Dominica's stake, Dominica's future, which is at stake. This is not some legal, esoteric, abstract legal issue. This goes to the very foundation of our democracy, the integrity of our laws, the supremacy of the Constitution, and the fact that no one, irrespective of the office he or she holds, is above the law. The second case is the electoral petitions, challenge to them, related to the 2019 decisions. Justice Glasgow had, again, made a decision regarding jurisdiction. Well, I think I've talked about it frankly. And again, he said, well, look, don't come to me. I have no jurisdiction, Gasso. No, he didn't say who they should go to. But again, the effect of that is if he was right, then it's a carte blanche. It's a blind check to govern in any fashion that you think that suits your purpose. And if hypothetically your purpose
Dr. Andre has a little temporary internet issue there. I'm pretty sure very shortly it will resolve itself and we will have him back with us. But if he doesn't come back on momentarily, then I will probably ask Dr. Swinburne Augustine to talk to us a little bit more about the COVID situation. In 2020, in 2021, we started somewhere in 2020, but in 2021 primarily. And where can we look forward to? Where could we be in 2022 on this issue? So maybe Dr. Augustine, maybe you might want to tell us a little something. But before you do, let us see. But before you do, I was hoping that let's talk about a little bit about a very illustrious lady who passed. I think yesterday, and I think we need to remember, but I think Dr. Andre is back with us.
Yeah, something happened.
Yeah. So his internet is having some issues there. It's going in and out. So we will, Dr. Augustine, I will let you let's talk about this lady until Dr. Andre comes back on, because it's something that we need to speak about when great people, great Dominicans pass. In fact, we should really give them the flowers while they're alive, but sometimes we really don't recognize them. And so we have to say something about this lady.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this panel, Sheridan, and happy holidays to you, Dr. George, Dr. Andre, Dr. Thomson, Fontaine, and Lambie, and the producers, and all Dominicans listening to the sound of my voice and to listening to this program tonight. I wish you all a safe and enjoyable holiday season. I hope that you had a very good Christmas. So I think Dr. Andre is back. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Dr. Andre.
I seem to be getting some difficulties. But again, just to wind up, these are very important issues that we have to deal with. We can't bury our head in the sand and pretend that they don't exist. Irrespective of where we stand on the political spectrum, who we support, who we don't support, we do not have the luxury of looking away as if nothing is happening. We do not have to be reminded of Martin Luther King's famous admonition regarding those who maintain their silence in the face of a national moral crisis, the place that it is reserved for them. We have to take this seriously. And I hope that in the new year, quite frankly, we are invigorated, we are energized, we are innovated to regard these issues as being very critical to our future existence as a democracy. Thank you.
Yes, I'm Dr. Augustine. So thank you very much for that brief introduction there, Dr. Andrea. I hope that your internet will resolve itself so that as we come back later with you, that we won't have those interruptions, because we so value your contribution to the conversation here tonight. We hope that internet is not going to interfere with that. But Dr. Augustine, you speaking about this lady, and I really thought that we should say something about her for a brief, moment before we move on with the conversation.
Sure thing. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Dr. Violin, as we call her, Coffee, sister to Father Coffee, as many people in Dominica know, and sister and kind of daughter to a teacher who got Teacher of the Year many times, Cynthia Morvan. We all grew up together in the Greens Lane, kind of lane area of Goodwill. And I remember in 1984, 85, before I left Dominica, I always used to tell when we got together in Greens Lane, recite a little story that my grandfather always told us, but some advice. He always used to say, it's not what you tell people, it's how you tell them. And then he said, tact, T-A-C-T, tact is the ability to tell somebody to go to hell and make them feel happy to be on their way. I didn't know where that quote came from then, but I remembered those words. And Violin remembered me telling the group of us that in Greens Lane. And one day she went to the old market, when they were selling all these arts and crafts, and she saw a little plaque with those exact words on it. And she bought that plaque. And today, right where I'm sitting, when you come down the steps, the first thing you see on the wall is that plaque. That plaque has been with me through combat. It has been with me through high and low. So let me talk about this young lady there, because I've been really proud of her. Violin has a PhD in, in sustainable tourism management from the University of Surrey in England, a Master of Science in Hospitality and Tourism Management from the University of the West Indies. She's a member of the Associate of Canadian Bankers from the Institute of Canadian Bankers, a Bachelor Ed with honors in home economics with teacher training from the University of Technology, a certificate education management and supervision from the University of West Indies. She has taught, she has written books, she has written a lot of papers, but I want to say just use her own words. And she says, I am keen on making valuable contribution to the field of tourism, events, research, and advancing the body of knowledge in the field. At that level, at that PhD level, she's not repeating something somebody else had done. She's discovering new knowledge. And she has been a cultural icon for Dominica, representing our country in London. She makes, as a matter of fact, she made a lot of the wobdouillette and the carnival costumes. She was very heavily involved in carnival and bringing Dominican culture and food to Great Britain. A very excellent public speaker. She was just recently got a big position in Toastmasters International in England. One of her last posts on Facebook, December 11th, it shocked me when after the news today, because that's the news that woke me up. She said in her very last post, in one of her last posts, she said, treasure every bit of the life you have today. Death does come as a thief in the dark of night. December 11th. Maybe we should take her advice and every single day, especially now that we are in this crazy pandemic that has been terrorizing us for 2 years, going into a year 3. It's been a really difficult year. Violin not only lost her life, but before that, she lost her sister, Cynthia. If you're listening to me, Cynthia, I am so sorry for your losses this year. Cynthia lost her husband. Many Dominicans know Cynthia and her husband because most of us got our cassettes and CDs at M&J's. That was just down from Astafans, the little hill before he went up to Virgin Lane or to the cathedral. They had their little store right there. So we made a lot of CDs, made a lot of cassettes, and gave music and joy to a lot of people. And Cynthia taught so much of us. So I just want to take this minute to just send all my condolences to Cynthia Morvan and her family. And Violin, you really made an impact where you were. Brought Dominica internationally, was very vested in tourism. And so she's a big loss. Sometimes, we never talk much about these people and the impact they've had. It may not have been that big locally, but it was global. And people will be reading her work for a long time. She has authored a number of books on tourism and others. She has authored a number of papers, and she has reviewed and edited a number of other books. So big up to our Dominican people. And I don't know, it's a very sad time.
Well, Swinburne, I'd like to think that all of us on this panel here tonight and all of our listeners condole with the family and friends of Violet. And certainly, it is Dominica's loss. It is the loss of the world, the loss of humanity. And so we really want to extend, I believe, on behalf of all of us here, our sincere sympathies, to the family and friends and the love
Thank you.
behind. Yes.
And we'll talk about COVID later.
Yes, we can talk about COVID later. I don't know whether Dr. Andre, you want us to go back to you because we sort of lost you there because this internet kept interfering with you. I don't know what sins you committed when you were young that is causing this thing to happen to you, but the internet keeps interfering with you.
But you're absolutely correct. The internet is playing tricks on me, and it's probably the sign of the times when nothing is certain. We can't take anything for granted. So that we do have an obligation to make use of, from a biblical perspective, whatever talents we have been given. And as I was telling Dr. Augustine a while ago, quite frankly, we do not have the luxury of using a stethoscope or telescope or whatever you call it, of taking it to the Roseau Cemetery and sending it down to see what goes on. We do not have that luxury. We do not have that luxury of perhaps changing our names to Lazarus with the hope that when the trumpet calleth, everyone downstairs with that name can come forth to get a second lease of life. We do not have that luxury. We have to make use and we have to justify why we're here. We have to justify the fact that we are here after the discovery of these vaccines, after the scientific progress made. Can you believe the hundreds of thousands of persons who died before the wonderful news of these vaccines that may at least be impediment to the spread of these the COVID pandemic? So we have to be thankful that, as I said, we have certain privileges that those who've gone did not have. So from my perspective, and I don't speak on behalf of anyone, I hope I can make as much use of whatever talents from a biblical perspective that I've been given, because nothing is there forever, because nothing is assured, not even your health. Dr. Augustine was talking about Dr. Coffee. Did she know that within weeks, a couple of weeks of sending that last post, it would be no more? So we have an obligation to push the envelope. That's the point. We have an obligation to do as much enlightening as we can. We have the obligation to help as many as we can. We have an obligation to spread the bread, if you want to use a colloquial expression. The whole question of sitting aside and in the best traditions of Otis Redding, we do not have that luxury. So here I stand, thankful for a little health, a little strength, regretful that I don't have the wealth of the station owner, but at least buoyed and motivated and animated by the assurance that I should try to make as much of that which I have been given and blessed as any other. And it seems to me that if we all try to do that, then Dominica will be a better place. The fact of the matter is, I think once Judith Festina once said, it's only when you're in opposition that you know who your friends are. Because persons gravitate towards those who can distribute things. And when I reflect, Mr. G, on one of the main issues of 2021, the debate about likability, I laugh. Because likability is inextricably connected to those who can give out things. Those who can give out gains which don't come from their pockets. You become likable. You can take from the consolidated fund and give away to cohorts and companions, so that there is a certain artificiality about this debate, which I think is, quite frankly, it has no merit. Whether you're a pastor or potentate and you want to talk about, well, some of us should be more likable. you're missing the point. You become likable because you are doling out taxpayers' money to favorites at the expense of those who may need it even more. And when we think about likability, we must meditate, for example, on the distribution of assistance at Christmas, how that is done, whether that extends to those, quite frankly, who do not share the same perspectives. The fact of the matter of that international organizations, and that is one of the central issues of 2021, gave Dominica millions and tens of millions of dollars to alleviate suffering on account of the pandemic. It wasn't done. It was held for nefarious purposes. So don't come preach to me about likability, guys. This is what you should be talking about. This is what you should be talking about. The use of state funds, taxpayers' money for cross political purposes. The use of state funds to persecute, and that's another theme of 2021. Persons who may have a different perspective. Why should people like Buju, I've never met the young man, be held in detention? What type of law is that? The Bush law. It's the law, frankly, which is not adhered to in any other democracy in the Caribbean, let alone in North America. What is the basis for all that? So don't come talking to me about likability when every instrument of state authority is being used in such a fashion to significantly take away the rights of others. That is what we should be talking about. That is what the topic should be about. Our reaction to the deprivation of the rights of Dominican citizens. That, in my view, is the question. You know, not whether someone likes me or don't, to be quite honest with you. And that is where we should start the conversation. Thank you.
And yes, Dr. Andre, and I want to just continue on that same vein there, because to me it's an important vein to start on, because and I want to go over to Dr. Thomson Fontaine. And as I go to him, I want to reflect on your words a little bit. You said the whole question of we need to push the envelope and be doing more while we are still here. I mean, this lady did not know that she would not be here, 3-4 weeks ago. She did not know that when she's writing that post. So you're saying we should do more. And that is why I want to go to Dr. Thomson Fontaine, because you see, the same way that I did not know so much about what Violet was doing, what she was all about, her accomplishments, how much do we really know about our own Dr. Thomson Fontaine, who's still here with us and who's been trying so hard to work for Dominica? He's worked for the Caribbean, he's worked for the International Monetary Fund, now he's always. And so I want to ask Dr. Thomson Fontaine, just because we're having this conversation tonight, before we segue into the real issues that we want to talk about, that some of which Dr. Andre already brought up, that we will be discussing in substantively later on. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Fontaine, what it is that you have been doing, what it is that you're doing now. And I am really astounded by the fact that someone like you, your country is keeping you out of it. You're contributing so much to other countries, and yet you are looking for an opportunity to contribute to your country, and you're not being allowed to do that. Let's talk about you a little bit before we go into those major issues.
Well, Sheridan, good evening to you, and of course to the distinguished panel. My buddies there, Dr. Andre, Dr. Swinburne, Dr. Dion. It's really a pleasure to be with you tonight. And of course, let me say a very special good evening to all Dominicans, beautiful people. And I just want to say a very special good night to all Dominicans who are listening. And thank you for the opportunity as well. I remember a few years ago, I was in Dominica, and somebody learning of my interest in politics tell me what I think I can do for Dominica. And at the time I did not get a chance to tell them what I have done for other countries. And but I can just mention a few. I think I can highlight a few of my I normally I don't feel comfortable talking about myself like this, but I think since you asked the question, I can highlight a few examples of it. Um, a few years ago, whilst I was in the International Monetary Fund, I traveled to Hanoi, Vietnam, and I was in a room with only myself and the finance minister of Vietnam. And we were discussing certain issues, we were discussing certain programs um, that, that were relevant to the Vietnamese, economy. And he was asking me for my advice on certain things that they were doing, certain reforms that they were undertaking in Vietnam. And I remember in the middle of this conversation, I had this thought, yeah, I am, a young boy or a young guy, a guy from Dominica, a population of 70,000, advising a minister of finance, a population of 70 million. And I think there the whole importance of what it was that I was doing kind of hit me. And it told me that I had something to contribute. So that's one example. And another example was in Afghanistan. I was very fortunate to one of the very first after the Americans invaded Afghanistan in 2001, December. I traveled to Afghanistan in April of 2002, myself with two other colleagues from the IMF. We were the first quote unquote Westerners to come to Afghanistan since the invasion. And our task, I ended up spending several weeks there, in fact, probably as much as almost 3 months. Our task was to help start the process of rebuilding. I was responsible for helping the central bank develop the currency that would restart the whole economy, because, as you know, after the Taliban was chased away, they had destroyed everything. The people who were there were not trained, they did not have the knowledge, and so on. And I was given a very important task of helping start to rebuild, the Afghanistan that we learned about, we learned in the last few years. That's the second. The third example that I can give was when I was asked again at the fund to train central bankers from all of the Caribbean region. So I spent several weeks in St. Kitts. We had the central bankers from the Bahamas all the way down the chain of islands to Guyana. That basically training them in monetary matters, monetary policy, and so on, balance of payments concerns, and all the rest of it. And then I did a similar training for central bankers in all the Arabic-speaking countries. I did that program in the United Arab Emirates. So these are some of the things I was able to do whilst at the IMF, and actually contribute in some way to a better understanding of some of the key areas in economics. I mean, my own research was in the area of currency research, currency crisis, what causes currency crisis, what countries need to do to avoid the pitfalls of a currency crisis and to safeguard the value of the currency. So helping to think through that process. I did a lot of breakthrough. In fact, that breakthrough work that gave me the in into the IMF, because they valued my contribution in that particular area. So that's some of what I was able to do, during my time at the IMF. And more recently, I've been in South Sudan. And I know I've heard some discussion about, Thomson is working for the most corrupt regime in the world. It is true that the government of South Sudan is highly corrupt. We are trying to change that. So my work is not to aid in the corruption, but the work that I'm doing now is to try to lead them away from corruption. A lot of the work that I've been doing is trying to get this government that's in place now to do the right thing, to undertake reforms. Part of the peace agreement that was signed has a detailed reform that has to be done that will safeguard the country's resources, because a lot of the corruption is around the oil revenues. The fact that the oil revenues was siphoned to some of the government, to some of the military, and that the vast majority of the people were not getting any of those resources. So a lot of what I've been involved in is trying to change that, trying to get the government to do what is important in terms of accountability, transparency in the use of oil resources, set up systems that the monies are known, that when the country sells its oil, that all of that money goes to a central fund that they will have access to. Is the kind of transparency that we need in our own Dominica. When you hear, for example, in Dominica, the government is able to siphon off billions of its money into private bank accounts, into an account of a general of hidden things, and where there is no transparency, no accountability, and so on. So these are some of the things that I've been working on and trying to at least leave a better country. It's a tough fight. It's a difficult struggle, but it's one which I'm proud of. Right, so that have a country that is transparent, a government that is doing right by its people. I'm big in terms of accountability and transparency. I believe that government should be accountable to the people. I believe that there should not be any corruption, because when there is corruption, is the average person who suffers. When, for example, in Dominica, because of the corruption in Dominica, we have people living in abject poverty in Dominica, something that I never imagined we would have ever seen. But because the resources that would otherwise go to Dominicans have been siphoned off in all sorts of directions, then you have problems. And that is something that I'm determined to fight against, whether it's in South Sudan or in Dominica. It's something I believe that is very important. That we need to be accountable when people elect us as leaders, that we need to be accountable to the people and to the people only. But we see in Dominica, if I can just segue into a situation in Dominica and some of the topics that we're talking about tonight, we see how it's just this situation where there is a lack of accountability, no transparency. When a government can tell you it's none of your damn business how they get the money. When you ask questions in Parliament about the missing billions of dollars, and then there is just silence, no attempts to explain, no attempts to apologize to the people, no attempts to make it right by the people. That is, to me, is extremely concerning, and particularly in a country like Dominica, with some 70,000 people, a country where, quite frankly, every single Dominican should be living the life. Every single Dominican should be of a middle-class status, because we have enough resources in Dominica to ensure that. But that's not been done. Instead, what we have is a government that has sadly enslaved, the people of Dominica, that has somehow found a way to convince people. And that to me is the ultimate the ultimate scandal of all of this, is that this government has somehow convinced the average Dominicans that they're doing right by them. Anyone who raises their voice in opposition is an enemy of the state. Anyone who tries to bring some kind of to bring some kind of semblance of normalcy and to explain, well, this is wrong, that they become the enemy. And it is very sad, where we've come, the struggles we're having with electoral reforms. For example, why, if your government that is so proud of your record, why are you afraid of having clean voters list? Why do you insist on stealing the elections? Why do you insist on remaining in office at all costs against the will of the people? These are some of the issues that I believe, and I hope, Sheridan, that as we go into 2022, as Dominicans, we begin to think about. I understand that for a lot of Dominicans, it's about survival. It's about getting the latest unexpired ham, but even then, it should not be. I mean, we should be better than this, as a country. We should be offering more to our people. We should be offering a way of life that our people can have work that they need, that they can have a decent day's work for a decent day's pay. We have all of this massive unemployment, for a relatively small country. You really only have to create jobs for about 20,000 people in Dominica. That to me is not a very difficult thing. And I know from my experience that this can be done, that this is possible. But somehow the government has convinced the people of Dominica that it is not possible to create jobs for all these young people. it is not possible to do things that will uplift everybody. So therefore, they select a certain few that will ensure they remain in office at the expense of everyone else, and I hope in this new year we can begin to have this conversation as we look back on some of the failings, some of the areas that we've gone wrong, that we can determine in our minds to fix this as we move forward in 2022.
Yes, thank you for that brief introduction there, Thomson. I mean, Dominicans need to know a little bit more about you, really, and I'm glad that I got you to expose some of that tonight. But then I believe when I go back to Dr. Andre a little bit later, a little bit from now, we'll talk a little bit about the whole question of this olive branch that people have been extending in Dominica, and the whole question of nolly crossing the Constitution at the same time while we're extending it by saying we don't need an opposition. And then, so because the Constitution does provide for an opposition, it's part of the government. So I'm not sure why we want to nolly cross it and then say we extend an olive branch. But I mean, wouldn't it be nice if Dominica would extend an olive branch to Dr. Thomson Fontaine and say, listen, we're going to drop all the bogus charges against you, and then let's come home and let us try to get this thing done. Look, you're saving other countries. We need you here to save us as well, or people need you. It would be nice to hear that in terms of this olive branch. And later on also, I will also ask Dr. Irving Andre to give us some comments about his thoughts on what he's hearing, about what's going on in Barbados. Because right there in Barbados, we had all this thing about Mayor Motley facing the world, and yet now we're hearing about an early election 17 months after she's taken up office, and we're hearing about people trying to move votes of no confidence in her, and so on and whatnot. So, Dr. Andre, you will look at that for us a little later on, because that has some, that's instructive for Dominica. There are some lessons for us to think about. We sometimes we feel we're so popular, but then the next day, you never know what's going to happen. So I want to go over to Dr. Dion George, as we to do his whole introduction. And Dr. George, let's get started with you, because I know you have a few things on your mind as well that you want to share with us tonight. So maybe we can get the ball rolling by your introduction. And then after that, I'll go to Dr. Swinburne to tell us briefly about where we are in this COVID situation, because I mean, how are we going to move our economy if we don't get this thing under control? So we need to get this under control and convince our people that they need to be part of the process to get the results, to part of the solution, to put us where we can be in some kind of semblance of normalcy to keep to start reviving and building our economy. All right, so Dr. George, let me go over to you, and you can tell us some of the things that you plan to talk about this evening with us before we really go into in-depth discussion in our second round.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Gregoire, and thank you for inviting me on this panel. I want to say good evening to my illustrious panelists, of course, Dr. Andre and Dr. Swinburne Augustine, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, and of course, Lambi and all the folks who are taking care of the business back home. In the spirit of Advent, in the spirit of Christmas, we have to give thanks to God for giving us the opportunity to share. This time, I guess the theme of tonight's program is a year in review. And so we'll talk about things that applies to Dominica and to the region by extension. And so I think it's a good opportunity, to look back and to have some thoughts about these things. I want to say something even before I give my introduction about Dr. Thomson Fontaine. I will tell you, Mr. Gregoire, that when I was doing my PhD, I concentrated on political economy. It's political science, but it was part of economics as well. And I needed some help. And I contacted him and I said, my name is Dion, I'm from Salisbury, but I'm trying to work on a PhD. And you know what Dr. Thomson Fontaine did? He flew from Washington, DC to Atlanta. And at the time I was teaching at 3 colleges, the graduate student. And he worked with me. He worked very well. And so right now he's part of my dissertation. And he really worked with me. And so this evening when I called him, he was in South Sudan. I said, what time is the program? I thought it's 7 o'clock. He says, no, it's 7:30, because there is the other program, which is called the Alternative View or the Other Side or something like that. But I want to say that I think Thomson has done very good for Dominica. And I think I've met him personally. He's a very good human being. And so today, before this show, Sheridan, I will tell you, some of my friends call me and they just lost a co-worker. And it's hard to see anybody cry. But when you see a grown man cry and pour tears, it touch you. And so my friend started crying and he lost his co-worker. And so I want to resonate with what Dr. Sim with Augustine said about the lady and how precious life is and how I guess our purpose here and our purpose here tonight is really to elevate. It's not to destroy, it's to elevate. And that's why I want to invite the Holy Spirit in our conversation. I want to invite God to guide us on everything we talk about. But several things I thought that I would talk about, you know, as the theme of the topic is the year in review. And so, I mean, from, let's say, September last year, we started talking about electoral reform. We started talking about campaign finance reform. I mean, we talk about governance. We talk about the economy. We talk about the CBI. And, you know, of course, there's a lot of criticism back and forth. There are others who give their positive feedbacks. But I said to myself, you know, why are these things important? And what is the purpose of having this conversation? I said, you know, let's just be quite honest. The big question is, do we need campaign finance reform? And the answer is yes. We need campaign finance reform. Why? Because without campaign finance reform, Mr. Gregoire, what we're going to have is a situation where we could have a possible situation where an investor from overseas can literally decide who gets projects and who do not get projects. We have a situation where, for example, let's just take for a reference, the United States. Let's say the Russian economy could have involved in the US elections. And people say, well, how is that possible? Well, if there's a private company and the person have interest in a foreign country, and they can finance a political party in another country, they can definitely influence the elections. Is that a concern? Of course, it's a concern. And so what do we want? We want fair and free elections. And this is not an analog where we have to compare things in any parochial way, but we really have to get very in depth. And I say that to mean that we have to say, okay, so how can we do it? I recall, I don't want to mention his name, but there is this person who was hired for campaign finance reform in Dominica. Well, not campaign finance reform, to actually help the electoral process. And in conversations with him and with other folks, he said, yeah, yes, he will consider electoral reform. But when it comes to campaign finance reform, what is the model? I mean, what do we have to show? So I suggested the Jamaica model and etc. He says, okay, good. Why is that important? It's important. It's important because the country does not belong to any personal political party. If I were to win election, or if my good friend, Dr. Irving Andre, who, by the way, some people of Salisbury have been telling me how much they love him. I think I should say that. Yes, they said me, I just love that guy. I say, really? She said, yeah, I just love the way he speaks. I say, good. And I say that because it's true. Let's say he was to be the prime minister in the coming years, and that he's engaged in some entity, and then Sheridan Gregoire has a company and Sheridan cannot get no projects. That's not fair. You know, so we really have to have an open thing where it's not money that decides who get the projects. It's really a situation where that people can bid and put their proposal forward and really apply. And there is it has to be a meritocracy process. Yeah, based on merit. Yeah. The other thing I think I want to talk about later is the CBI. I am not one of the folks who call QFM during the talk on the block. I like that show. Every time I get a chance, I listen to it. And I will not criticize the CBI. There is no reason to. If it's bringing income and revenue to the island, I think that's a good thing. I think it's a very good thing. What I would say as an analyst, as a political scientist, is this, that there is something called the Dutch disease. And the Dutch disease is a situation where it's like a mono sort of sectorial economy. Case in point, Venezuela. Everybody know oil is the top resource. Consider Venezuela being maybe, if not number one, maybe number 2 or 3, not beyond Saudi Arabia, not beyond the United States. Venezuela have to be in the top 3. And look at the situation where folks are running to Trinidad, folks are running to other places. Why is that happening? It's the Dutch disease. And so if someone says, oh, the CBI is good, it's very good, it's good for tourism, okay, the question becomes, and it's the big question, why hasn't it trickled down and filtered through the other sectors of the economy? And can we sustain on that? Now, please understand what I'm saying. I'm not criticizing the CBI. I'm saying, is that the optimal way of going? And the answer is no, it's not. And so there have to be other private investors, other ways that we as Dominicans who really do love Dominica and care for the socio-economic development of Dominica, for the people to survive. Now, one of the disadvantages of having a monosectorial economy, it's a big word, but it's a very simple thing. It's called the Genie Coefficient. And it's a score from 0 to 1. 0 meaning equally perfect, and 1 meaning unequal. And so what that means, say, for example, if those who involved in the CBI are making a lot of money, a lot, and those out of it not making nothing, that's not good. We have an unequal balance of distribution of wealth. And so what, I can get into that later, but we really have to talk about bringing other private investors to get things more balanced, more balance. The other thing I think that we can talk about, again, it's just an introduction, but these are things on my mind, and as you correctly said, it's a year in review. About electoral reform, of course, I think the community of Dominica and by and large people who follow QFM, they are saturated with the idea of cleaning the voters list, the diaspora voting, all these things. Everybody knows what it is. Residency. I mean, there's no reason to go in the Constitution and spell it out. I think credit to you, Mr. Gregoire, Dr. Andre, and other folks who have contributed to this show. The public is well informed. The question is, what is happening? Okay, we understand that there is someone that they hired to be very impartial on that note. Where is the report? Where is the report? Do we have an ATA, or sorry, it's called ETA, estimated time of arrival? Is the public concerned about when that report is going to come out? Should that be a question? I think it should. And what's going to be the value of that report? And the implications of that report? And the applicability of that report? And so, Mr. Gregoire, we have a year in review there. And I think one of the things that I honestly believe that we should talk about tonight are recommendations as a way to move forward. Because we cannot just criticize, we could talk, but we are analyzing, we are exploring, we are looking at different ways of looking at the best way forward for our country, where we all want to live. That's where I want to live. Because I love it, and I love my people very deeply, very deeply. When Mr. Dr. Swinburne Augustine spoke about the lady, it touched me. I shed a tear. I don't know if you saw, I shed a tear. Because a co-worker called me today and told me he lost his friend. I live with a mom who is not in best health, but God has blessed me with her, and I love her very much. I told you how Thomson came by me, left his work and came and spent a whole week by me to help me finish my PhD. I've never said that on air, but it's true. He can tell you. So right now, Mr. Gregoire, I just published a book. It's called The Politics of Intergovernmental Relations. It's a book that looks at the federal government in the United States, the state governments, and the local governments, and how they interact and how they work together. And I put one chapter in it, which is called the COVID virus. And I think perhaps Dr. Swinburne can comment on that. But some of the case studies I include in that chapter is the governor of New York, a farmer, I must say, Cuomo, and how he wanted to mandate stuff. And places like Georgia says, not happening. Not happening. You know, and they said they don't have to put masks. They're not putting masks in their face. And so how does that work and who can mandate it? Maybe Dr. Swinburne can comment on that. But it's a very interesting thing. And so the book is not expensive. Maybe I can share that link sometime if you can allow me, Mr. Gregoire. Maybe on your link. It's not expensive. It's only $4.99. And it is selling very quickly. Many of my students are buying it. It's an interesting read. It's called The Politics of Intergovernmental Relations by Dr. Dion George. That's fine. The next one I have coming out is in January 1st. It's called The IMF and CARICOM. I call it Perpetual Dependency. And I look at a series of phases from colonialism to independence to what I call the first phase of export orientation or plantation. So plantation, export orientation, import substitution, and what I call now the advent of the International Monetary Fund. Thomson worked with me on that project. And it's a 300-page book. This one will be $29 US. And it will be available on Amazon as well. You just Google it. But I mean, looking at the year in review, I think these are things we have talked about. We have exhausted some topic, but I think they are still very relevant, very paramount to discuss. And I just wanted to say, I want to thank you so much for inviting me to share my thoughts, to share what I believe is good for our country that we all do love, and how we can tonight have a review and to see if we can give some recommendations of good cheer for our people. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and thanks a lot for that, Dr. George, and congratulations on your publications, and I wish you great success. That the first book seems to be doing very well. I hope the second one does equally as well, because it looks like a more substantive publication that can be used in our region, in all of the islands in our region. But I wanted to go over to Dr. Swinburne Augustine, but as I do, I wanted to assure you, Dr. George, that our intention here tonight is to look at the year in review, look at Dominic in the review mirror, look at the issues that we discussed, bring them back and say, here is what we want to do about them going into 2022 and beyond. So we will be coming out with recommendations about all of those issues, I hope, that we've been talking about, so our listeners can see this is what we are suggesting. But it means whatever actions we suggest, people have to make up their mind they're going to stick with that actions. Because people, sometimes we tend to talk and then we don't want to go out when they call to action. So I think if Dominicans want to get results, like other countries get results, they must resolve to be a part of the actions that are required to get those results. But Dr. Augustine, if you could tell us briefly where we are on this COVID thing so that we can then start to see how we can maneuver ourselves into some semblance of some new level of normal so that we can carry on with the business of trying to take this country out of where it is now and to take it somewhere starting from 2022. So I know this variant is predominant, but tell us a little bit more about it, because some people are very concerned, and I'm not so sure we should be as concerned as some people are making out to be, but you tell us about it.
Thank you again, Sheridan. What a year it has been. A year of grief and sadness and pain and suffering. But in the midst of all that, though, we have had some amazing breakthroughs, amazing science for the first time in our lifetimes. All of us sitting here, the entire scientific community got together with the governments around the world to come up with a vaccine, a set of vaccines, let's put it that way, to combat a unique, once in a lifetime historical event, the COVID-19 pandemic. People have used what they hear in the news to kind of criticize the science and criticize messengers like me. But to explain it simply, is that they are actually seeing the scientific process in action. It's not a straight line from what you hypothesize to your results. Sometimes it's convoluted. You know, it's like going down a valley and going back up a hill and finding that when you get up the top of the hill, now that's not where you needed to be. You need to go back somewhere else. So they are actually seeing, it's not confusion. To the news people, it may seem that way. But to us scientists, we know that it's like filing a cutlass. You know, you go in mountain and you got to file your cutlass and sharpen it. And you take your time. And that's what we've been doing. So the data, the way you design the experiments and the data that you get from it it's not much different from what Dr. Andre does. He, when cases come to him, I'm sure he has to research the law, research precedents, research a whole lot of things before he can make a decision. Thomson, same thing. And Dr. George, same thing. So we are refining, we are looking at the data, we're seeing, yes, we're not perfect, scientists are not perfect, but that's the beauty of everybody working in concert, because then we review each other, we keep each other accountable, and we make sure that what we say makes sense. More than 800,000 Americans are dead. Almost a million, coming close to a million. Today, about 1,250 people lost their lives here. 1,250. At the very beginning of the pandemic, you know, I was pretty much afraid. I wouldn't even leave my house. You know, if I could get prison guards to come and keep me in the house, I probably would. Because we had no idea what this thing is, what it was, where it came from, why it's killing so many people so quickly. But we found it. We knew. Now we know it's the coronavirus. We had seen it before in 2002, in 2012. We saw it before. And one of the things that bothers me about science and policy together, politics and science together, is that what happened after we got rid of them, the first SARS and the MERS, we decided, you know what, they're gone, so let's stop doing the research. Let's focus on something else. So that put us way back. We have to start thinking forward for Dominica and for the Caribbean. We do not have the infrastructure and the resources, financial or otherwise, to handle the load that Kansas City, that Kansas and other areas around the United States are doing with overfilled hospitals. The Omicron variant is about 70 times faster, 70. It infects you 70 times faster than the Delta variant, which is 50 times faster than its predecessor. 70 times. You will notice that the CDC cut down earlier this week, probably yesterday, cut down the time for quarantine. First it was 14 days, then 10 days, now 5 days. Why? Because that Omicron variant, the time from infection to when you start to show symptoms and spread it has been cut. For the earlier variants, it was like 7 to 10 days. For Delta, it was 5 to 7 days. For Omicron, it is about 3 days, 3. You start showing symptoms, you are infectious within 3 days. What is happening? The virus is getting to, it's getting more rapid in the way it infects us. Where it infects us is in our respiratory tract, going down into your lungs. Thank God for that, because that may be our little saving grace with Omicron. More damage is done by Delta because it infects inside of your lung cells. And inside of your lungs, that is where I explained before, that is where you exchange carbon dioxide from all the processes that we're burning in our cells. We're exchanging that carbon dioxide, which is toxic and will kill us, for oxygen. But in your respiratory tract, your bronchial tubes going down, it's not so bad. And that's part of the reason why the research is showing that it's so infectious, because it's right there inside your lungs, and it rapidly multiplies inside your respiratory tract. So that's one good thing. The other thing about Omicron is that there are about 50 mutations compared to Delta and the other variants. What is the virus trying to do? What is a variant? Why is it mutating? It wants to survive. It wants to evade the vaccines that we have, the same ones that a lot of people don't want to take. It's sad. To me, it is very, very sad. And I'm going into this new year with this on my heart, that when Dominica, when I started to talk about this and write about this for DNO and Image Magazine and talk around the Caribbean and Dominica on every radio station and TV, Dominica had no deaths. But what Dominica had was vaccines. Right? No deaths, but vaccines. People are still, after a year, almost 2 years in this mess, still hesitant. They're still doubting. Well, I have taken both. I took Moderna and I have taken my booster shot. That is why I could have Christmas with my family, my mom, who is in her late 70s, and my grandkids, everybody together, because we vaccinated and we have taken our boosters. I know it protects me. I am absolutely certain of that. So my message and what Omicron is doing, if you are not vaccinated, you're putting yourself at risk. Dr. George talked about mandates. I work for the US federal government. I'm a scientist for the US federal government at the US Environmental Protection Agency. We are kind of like the second biggest public health agency in the world. We not only do the environment, the mission of the Environmental Protection Agency is to protect public health first, public health and the environment, because there are nexuses there. There's a lot that comes from the environment that messes us up inside, or all the way to our DNA. So the mandates, the federal mandates, are to ensure that when we do go back to work, when we do go back to our offices, it's almost 2 years I haven't been back to my office. Yes, I go down to the lab to get something and talk to my technicians, but I tend to stay away, because every couple of days or every few days we get emails saying another person's positive. And what that means, that in that body of that email it says, and we have contacted all, and we are contacting all the people that they came in contact with in the building, and you know what they're going to do? Send them home. How many businesses in Dominica can handle that? It's going to continue, because the virus, as it keeps changing, and it is only changing in unvaccinated people, period. Why? Why would it change in unvaccinated people and not in vaccinated people? It's simple. I will use, let's say, Mero Beach. A lot of people like to go to Mero and party. Let's use that. Imagine you at Mero, and there are a whole bunch of sharks just hanging out in that water there. Let me see you jump in there. Go in there and jump. The antibodies that we get from the vaccine, now you can get them from getting infected with COVID, but I would not recommend that, because we don't know all the damage it is doing inside of you. We don't know yet the long-term effects of COVID. So don't take a chance on this. Don't. Because I know there is, if you're unvaccinated, and I will say it again, if you get COVID, there's a 50-50 chance you'll die. And if you survive, people are having long COVID from 2 years ago, and they can't walk 10 minutes without needing to sit. And that's the young people who are sports people. Look at the football, the college football and the NFL, and look at what's happening now. Yes, we try to get back to normal. We try to force things. But when you force them, the virus is still there. Just we can't see them, so we tend to think it's not. It is. It is right there waiting to kill you. So the mandates are just this. There are people who don't want to take it, and they don't. But it's not a personal thing. And it's not that people want to use any kind of law of force. The thing is, all this economic development you're going to talk about tonight, it will not happen. Those are my words. It will never happen until we get rid of COVID. We can't. We cannot do that. We will be spending a lot of money in the hospitals that will be overflowing. Our nurses and our doctors are already tired. Mr. Gregoire, you know, we've talked about that on several shows. They are tired. The hospital systems here are overflowing. So governments have to do something, because I believe that the primary responsibility of any government, number one, is to protect the citizens of that country. Nothing else. After that, you can talk about that. If I'm dead, It doesn't matter what kind of infrastructure you do. It doesn't. And you can't even use it because everybody will be sick in the hospital getting rationed care. So my whole passion about Omicron, Delta, it doesn't matter what you call it. The virus is trying to kill all of us, and we are trying to stop it from doing that. The only way, just as I wrote since March last year, is to get vaccinated and get a booster. So the reason why we went, remember at one point, herd immunity was like, oh, if we get to 75%, we will be in herd immunity, we'll be okay. Then Delta came along and Delta shifted it to 90%, 85, 90%. So and what will Omicron do? I don't know. We don't know yet because the symptoms seem to be milder because of where it is infecting. Not down inside your lung cells, but in the in the bronchial tube. So please, so if you're hearing me, again, my gift to you, the best gift I can give you this holiday season is the advice, the free advice to get vaccinated to protect you and your family, because it's not about you just being this big superhero that I'm not taking any vaccine, I'm not doing this. You might be the one to have that variant that kills us all.
Mr. Gregoire, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, by all means.
Thank you very much. Dr. Swinburne Augustine.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I have a concern. It's a very genuine concern. It's also personal,
Absolutely.
Yes. Why is it that people who are fully vaccinated are catching this new variant?
Good, very good question. And we can catch any other variant, not just this, because of how the infection process is. Even if you're vaccinated, remember the antibodies are in your bloodstream, not in your nose, not in your lungs. It's in your bloodstream. So when that's what I was talking about, Mero Beach and the sharks. So when the sharks are the antibodies, the sea, the ocean, the salt water there is your blood. And you have the sharks and you have other animals, other fish in there. When the virus gets in there, it takes when it infects your cells, it takes about a week to 2 weeks for your immune system to rise. Even if you have already gotten the vaccine, it doesn't stay high. Let me see if you can see it. Maybe you can see it. So I'm going to show a picture of why.
And
it will explain it to you.
Dr. Augustine, we probably want to spend maybe another 5 minutes on it, and after that
okay,
we'll move on. Okay. So
let's see if I can. It's not true. When you first get infected, you get IgM antibody, and IgG comes about a few days later. IgM is big, it's not specific, it's just a generalist, it just goes and destroys what it sees. But IgG, immunoglobulin G, is the one that keeps the memory. And the memory is what we need. So the first shot, those two antibodies are low. The second time you get either infected with that thing or you get vaccinated, the second shot, it rises very high. But it starts to wane in about 56 days. So now they're finding that with Delta, and the other variants, you had about 6 months protection if you got vaccinated, and just a little less if you got infected with the virus itself. With Omicron, they're finding there's even a shorter period that you have protection even with the booster. So that 1 to 2 weeks that it takes to wake up the immune system again after you've had the antibodies, to wake up the sharks, you're gonna have some symptoms. The key though is not that you got infected. The key and the most important thing is that you may not end up severely ill, in the hospital, or dead.
Point
And
taken.
that, I think, is the biggest gift.
That's it. Yeah, I think the point is, with the vaccination, it doesn't say that you are totally immune, but if you do, first of all, it protects you, but if you do get infected, the effect would be less.
Yes, them sharks will eat up.
That's it. All right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yes,
So I want to give Dominica this.
Yeah.
You all have the vaccines, and I'll give a story. One of my favorite uncles, Felix, he was senior police officer. A couple days before Christmas, he was on his way to town driving, and he said, "You know what? I'm thinking about getting a booster, and I don't know which one to do." And I said to him, and that was from all my heart, if I were in Dominica now, I wouldn't have taken the Moderna as my booster. I would have taken the Chinese Sinopharm as my booster. I'll tell you why. Because the 50 mutations or so that are in Omicron, about 30 of them are in the spike protein. All of us, except those who got the Russian Sputnik 5 and the Sinopharm, are only protected against the spike protein of the virus. If that changes, we are screwed to high heaven. The Chinese and the Russians did it the old way. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just that we needed to something to stop this thing killing us. But you have different pieces of the virus because they used the whole virus, inactivated it, and injected into you. So you have pieces of all those of the virus, whereas those of us with the mRNA vaccines or the viral vector vaccines like Johnson & Johnson only protected against the spike protein. And if it succeeds in doing that, I mean, we are really screwed. So I would just tell Dominicans to please, 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 this is not about money. It's not about religion. It's not about politics. It's about health, and it's about your life. And please get vaccinated, get your booster to protect and to stop this pandemic. Dominica, 70,000 people, like Thomson said a while ago. We can stop it.
Yep. And Dr. Augustine, I mean, thanks a lot for that. We really needed to get this because we know that there's still people who are hesitant about this. I've had my vaccines, I've been saying so the longest while. I'm ready to take my booster once I become eligible for it, and I certainly will be happy to take it. I've had no problem since I took it. So I recommend it to anybody who feels that they want to take it. Go ahead and take it. It's okay. Now, let us get into the meat of some of the things we came here to talk about tonight. Notwithstanding Dr. Augustine has told us, in order for us to really get into that, we have to first get this thing under control. Not that we'll get rid of the virus, but certainly we should protect ourselves from it so that we can manage even with it around us. But I want to go back to Dr. Andre, because Dr. Andre, now we're ready to talk about the real issues that we saw in 2020. 2021 and before that, and what it is that we'd like to do about it. We really want to now go into those things. Let me start off by just pointing out a couple of things, because we mentioned that word corruption a few times. We've seen it happen. And I did ask you, Dr. Andre, that you may want to comment on this thing what's happening in Barbados now, because I mean, we thought that everything was honky-dory with the Prime Minister of Barbados. All of a sudden we're hearing she's on shaky grounds. We don't know if that is true. It may or may not be the case, but I mean, the fact that you have an election 17 months after you had the last one is a clear indication that there is something amiss. But let me just say this as I introduce you to go ahead, Dr. Andre. On the matter of corruption, there are some esteemed colleagues who seem to know about the impacts of corruption. And I'm mentioning that because there's so much talk about corruption in Dominica, so much talk about it. And so if we have to make people understand what could be the impact of this, and so some of the colleagues who have been, who know about these things much better than I do are saying it has a negative impact on the GDP of the country and robs the people of many multi-million dollars that could be used to build their personal life. And Dr. Thomson Fontaine mentioned that his experience in some of those countries when he was with the IMF and now that he's in South Sudan. It says that also that persons employed to prevent corruption often end up facilitating it and embracing cronyism and nepotism and other governance failures. Says that the negative impact on it has a negative impact on the most vulnerable people. We see that in Dominica. I mean, the most vulnerable and dependent people are the ones taking the brunt of it. And that it reduces their access to services, including health and education and justice. Dr. Fontaine mentioned some of those. It certainly increases the cost of living, and we see the cost of living rising in Dominica. The whole question of Transparency International saying that some of our Caribbean countries have scored about what, 30% out of on a range of 0 to 100 in the corruption perception index, where 0 means highly corrupt and 100 means very clean. The CBI indicates that a score of under 50% signals prevalent bribery and a lack of punishment for corruption and public institutions that do not respond to the needs of citizens. So this is, we can see what is happening to our institutions in Dominica. We have our IPO, we're not hearing about it. We have our electoral commission, they're not doing what they're supposed to do. All of our public institutions seem to be turning a blind eye and everything. And we see no public officials being, brought to justice for corruption. The whole question of integrity in public office legislation, or the establishment of the commission has not done anything to bring an end to any corruption. We heard about a case, Dr. Andre, very recently, the last IPO, were trying to go to court and they were dissolved. And new people were put on, a smaller committee. And the cost of corruption, of course, is far-reaching, and in that it brings adverse sociological consequences as well. It erodes the equality, the quality of life, and the living standards of citizens by diverting critical funds away from essential social services such as healthcare, education, water, roads, electricity, things that affect the ordinary man. We see it happening all the time. People are complaining about those things. Corruption also leads to human rights violations, stealing of elections, distorting financial markets, reducing investor confidence, stunting business activities, wiping out jobs. We see that already. We see businesses closing, fueling migration. We see people living by droves, increases the price of goods and services, and undermines and destroys confidence in public institutions, and enables organized crime and other threats to human security to flourish. And it sometimes kills. So Dr. Andre, I mentioned a few of those things there because I know you know a lot more about those things than I do. I'm just mentioning what some of these learned people have been saying about this. And I wanted to put all those things in context for us, not just the corruption, but the CBI thing and all of the other ills that we've been talking about. And what it is that we can do going forward in 2022 to really mitigate against those things and put us on a better path to trying to have some economic recovery.
Yes, Mr. G, I hope you can hear me. I seem to be having some challenges in terms of my audio, so I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Oh, we're hearing you very, very clearly.
Well, that is wonderful. First of all, let us meditate on the Barbados issue.
Right.
Now, Mia Motley comes to the table not with clean hands. Recall Mia Motley's role in the export of the Ross Medical School to Barbados. Recall also Mia Motley's role with respect to a regional quasi-military force. On the very eve of an election, recall the actions of that regional force with respect to the community of Dr. George in Salisbury. Reflect on the impact of that action, that capricious action, on the free exercise of choice in a general election. There is only one reason for this declaration of elections on about January the 13th. because we know it so well in Dominica. It's a cynical attempt to perpetuate oneself in power. The timing is not by accident. It is coming on the heels of this massive ceremony where they declared that they would become a republic. 80% of Barbadians supported that move. Mayor Motley is simply trying to reap the benefit of that popularity engendered by the decision to become a republic. There is nothing else explaining this decision to, as you put it, have new elections within 17 months of winning an election. The timing could not have been better for her. There is absolutely no possibility that she would become even more popular, though she is stealthily seeking to do and to win a victory that she may be deprived of if her term was to run its course. She sees on the horizon dark economic clouds, the same type of economic clouds that now afflict us. But the Barbados situation is different. You don't mess with the Bajans, although they can be very irritating. They have no difficulty exercising their right to vote. They will not be bribed with a sheet of galvanized or $100 or a brown paper bag with one chicken leg, a pound of sugar and a pound of rice or sweet potato. They will exercise their choice, their right to vote freely and fairly, as they've done. Recall the mandate that they gave Miss Motley on the last occasion. I think she won every seat in Parliament. But it is quite likely that they're not in the same frame of mind. So this timing is as cynical and opportunistic as you can think of. You've delineated all the adverse effects of corruption. There is one central metaphor you can draw without giving that long list. Think of the termites problem that we have in Dominica. They're everywhere. Your little door to your washroom, at the bottom of it, you see a little, whatever you call it. It is being eaten under your very nose, day in, day out.
It's called pool bois.
Pool bois.
Thank you.
Thanks for giving me the real meaning.
You're welcome.
Think of an inexorable process of decline and deterioration. That is what corruption does to you. There is no relief. There is no stopping of the process. The door will inevitably be reduced. All the innards and the insides would be eaten even as you go in and out of your home. And that applies to every piece of wooden furniture you have in your home. You can spray it occasionally, but that will not suffice. The only fundamental and effective remedial treatment you can have is to remove it. That is where we face, and that is what leads us to the whole question of remedies. What can we do? The fundamental question Dominicans have to ask themselves is very simple. Are you prepared to become the stone that the builder refused? Are you prepared to become the 10th leper who went to say thank you for the gift of life? Are you prepared to become that young Megzo who took down the behemoth, Goliath? Are you prepared to exploit that gift of life, that energy, that creativity, that intelligence that you have when so many others do not? Are you prepared to give birth to that king or queen that lies and rests within each of us, that is dormant, that is looking for an avenue to express himself or herself? Are you prepared to join hands to protect that which is most valuable to your existence? That is the question, Mr. G.
Yes, and I'm sure that I believe you were addressing that question to Dr. Thomson Fontaine, because you can see he's the man of the hour who's already addressing those questions and trying to fix up some of these countries that have those problems. And so I think Dr. Andre, we're moving into the realm where now we want to talk about identifying this problem, but finding the solutions for them. And certainly, as Dion spoke about a little earlier about the whole question of electoral reform, I mean, something has to be done. And we can't be talking about electoral reform, campaign finance reform forever. Thankfully, I'm hearing about one or two groups like NJAM and so on were saying, okay, this is what we're going to do this and we're going to take action. Well, we'll wait to see what the action is. And I believe whatever action that is taken to try to get electoral reform and campaign finance reform, I believe everybody should support it, whether you support the Labour Party or Freedom or EWP, because I think free and fair elections is essential to a democracy. And we all want a democracy for our country. We've seen some other countries where they don't have a democracy. We see where they're headed, and we all want that. So I think everybody should support free and fair elections. We saw how that stabilized Jamaica's politics. We saw what it happened in Antigua and St. Lucia, and we look, Barbados. You see what is happening in Barbados now, 17 months after this thing, people are saying, hey, something is going on. I mean, the people inside of Mayor Motley's cabinet simply saying we don't agree with everything there, and then we want to move some kind of vote of confidence. And they did not succeed, but the point is, Dr. Thomson Fontaine, I want to go to you, but let's see if Lambi can give us Lambi simply waving to me that he has a call that he'd like to take. So let me just indulge Lambi a moment. Lambi, let's hear the callers and take that call.
Good evening, caller. Thanks for calling. Go ahead, please, with your call.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Well, we're still in the Christmas season now, and I want to extend Feliz Navidad to everybody, and hope that the new year is going to be full of good things.
And the same to you.
Thanks very much. You know, Mr. G, I'm not sure as to how many of us really realize and accept the fact that Roosevelt Skerrit is prepared to kill to stay in office. He is prepared to bring people down to the ground and even to their grave to stay in office. You see what he did in Parliament? How he brought his military to Parliament to almost want to kill the opposition parliamentarians because they were armed with weapons. And Roosevelt Skerrit is not going to accept the fact that he's going to be defeated at the poll. He will kill the election. And any Dominican who try to prevent that, he has his mongoose gang in the force to go out and open fire on them. So he is prepared to kill to stay in office. That's my word. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, I'm not sure I would like to go as far as that to say that I don't have the evidence to say that he personally is prepared to kill. But I mean, like you say, there has been some evidence that shows that there were people who came in fact armed around the parliament. That certainly is clear. Dr. Thomson Fontaine, I don't know whether Lambi has any other call you want to take before we move on, but let's go to you because I know that you want to add some stuff to all of this.
Yes, certainly, Mr. G. I want to concur with what was said previously by Dr. Andrew with regards to the Barbados situation, and of course to add my own disappointment to the action that Mayor Motley took in Dominica, and it's something that I believe as Dominicans we have to continue to demand an apology from Mayor Motley for the way she treated the people of Salisbury and the actions that were taken, something that would never happen in Barbados. She would never allow security forces to be unleashed on the people on the eve of an election. Yes, she did it in Dominica. You know, the fact that she's fighting for her political life, obviously she's taken some decisions that some within her party are not happy of, and contrary to what we see in Dominica, where anything Roosevelt Skerrit does, all his 18 parliamentarian supports him. That's different in Barbados. People are independent. People are clear-minded as to where they want to see their country, and they have said to her that certain of the decisions she's taken, they're not in approval of. And the whole question of an election now is simply to try to resolve some of those issues. But it shows that this, in a way, this is a healthy democracy, and very contrary to what we have in Dominica. And that, to me, is the number one lesson from this, that you wish you had a system where our own politicians were prepared to face down the government when they see the government going wrong. I mean, why is it that not one of the members of government, not one, has called on Roosevelt Skerrit to return the $4 billion to the Treasury, to make sure that all of the money goes through the consolidated fund, as is the laws of Dominica? Not one parliamentarian is calling for this. So it tells me where we are with regards to our democracy in Dominica and how far ahead Barbados is. We saw, for example, in St. Lucia, people were willing to change the government again after 5 years. They allowed Shasta 5 years. They did not like what he was doing. They got rid of him, put in a new administration. So we need to be able to do those kind of things in our democracy in Dominica. But the starting point ultimately is reform. And I cannot believe that 2 years into an election where Roosevelt Skerrit promised that this would be a priority, he has yet to offer this. But I think we need to send a very clear message, a very clear, unequivocal, distinct message to Roosevelt Skerrit, that we, the Dominican people, will not allow another election under those old rules. We will not allow another election in Dominica where we do not have a clean voters list and where we conduct the elections according to the rule of law. I mean, that has to come very, very clearly. And if it means being on the streets, if it means taking civil action, if it means giving the ultimate sacrifice, that is what we have to be prepared to do. Because I personally, Sheridan, I personally believe Dominica is worth fighting for. I believe that, in my vision of Dominica, I see a country that can really be the beacon, that can really be the shining light in the Caribbean region. We have lost our way. We are now groping in the dark because we've lost our way. We've lost some of our, we've lost the agriculture sector under Roosevelt Skerrit. We've lost, thousands and thousands of jobs under him. We've lost Ross University. We continue to lose our way, but I still believe that Dominica is worth fighting for. And I hope that the people of Dominica will determine this year that they are going to demand that we don't continue to go the way of the dictator, but that we have a thriving democracy. We should ask for nothing more or nothing less, but a thriving democracy, one where the rule of laws are respected, one where people feel free to express themselves, and where we are completely in control of our destiny. And we need to send a very strong message to Roosevelt Skerrit that Dominica was not given to him as a bequeath to him. Dominica is not his own, that Dominica belongs to the people of Dominica, and he's done enough damage. And that to me is a fundamental message that I think we need to take from all of this, that Dominica does not belong to Roosevelt Skerrit. Dominica belongs to the people of Dominica, and that we are prepared to stand, we are prepared to take whatever action is necessary to ensure that we do not go down the way of a dictator, but that we have a thriving democracy. And that has to be the way forward. I can think of no other way forward but that way. And having said that also, you talked about the olive branch and all the rest of it, but bear in mind, I've done no wrong in Dominica. I've not committed any crime in Dominica. Absolutely not. I have not committed any crime in Dominica, yet I've been brought before the courts, as was, others, Lennox Linton, for example, and Joshua and the others, Edison James. We have not done anything wrong in Dominica, yet, we've been, the attempt has been to somehow make us the criminals when we are not. So I believe fundamentally, Mr. G, we need a change of direction in Dominica. I believe Dominica needs a chance to breathe. Dominica needs a chance to, just get off our necks. Skerrit doesn't need to get off the necks of the Dominican public. I think we are We are fed up. Nuka tufe. You know, Nuka tufe, and we need to get them off our necks. We need to have a change, a fresh breath of fresh air in Dominica. A new governance, a government that will respect the rights of the people, a government that will not turn one group against the other, a government that will not favor one group over the other, a government that will create an equal playing field so that people who are willing to contribute, their work will be respected. Those who are willing to work hard for the country will be rewarded. And that's the kind of community, that's the kind of society that we need to be thinking of. Not the kind of society where we are split down the middle, where you deliver harm in the dead of night to one group of people, where you give handouts to one group of people, where there's favoritism, where there's nepotism. We need to come again. We need to fight against this. I believe that fundamentally as a people, we are better than this. We are better than Roosevelt Skerritt's Dominica. And we need to change that graphic. We need to change that conversation. We need to begin talking about the development of our country in a real and meaningful way. We need to continue to give a hand up to those who are less fortunate amongst us, but we cannot continue on the Skerritt rule. Look at two-way, man.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Fontaine. Let's take a call, Lambi, before we move on to Dr. George.
Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your call.
Yeah, how do you expect a change when you use the same method over and over? I'm listening to the program, and it's sounding like a program of last year. So what if I don't see any change from your strategy?
Thank you, Lambi.
Make a difference.
Let Dr. Andre answer that one for us, please.
I would tell your caller, I haven't heard any change from what he's been saying for years. He's been singing the same song, and he should at least challenge himself to sing a song of freedom, a song. So he may not hear any change in what is being said tonight, but we haven't heard any change from the nonsense he's been talking day in and day out. If he was a policeman, he should have at least a modicum of honesty and integrity and decency and feeling and thirst for law and order. But he's obviously not a policeman or a retired one. He's obviously just a hired gun.
And Mr. J as well, the change we're talking about is a determination. I think we've identified where the problem is. The problem is a Dominica that is under the boot of Roosevelt Skerritt, been ground into the ground, literally on the heads of Dominicans. And we're saying that we need to change that. We're saying that we need to fight for political reform, electoral reform. We need to demand free and fair elections, and that we will do everything that is necessary to achieve those. And that there will be no election in Dominica without electoral reform. I think that is what we're saying. And whether we've said it last year, we'll say it again, and we'll say it until we have electoral reform and until we have a change of government in Dominica. That's the only way forward for Dominica, really, quite frankly.
Of course, Dr. Fontaine, and as Dr. Andre has said so eloquently, I mean, you know, part of the problem when you have this corruption and this persistent in undermining democracy and so on is because some certain persons who were employed to prevent the corruption end up facilitating it and enabling it and embracing the cronyism and nepotism and all the other failures. And that is why sometimes you get people calling and saying, well, you're saying the same, because they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the truth. But the point is, I agree that Dominicans need to stand up. You know, they need to stand up around the Constitution. You have to stand up for your Constitution. Nobody can tell you, you know, it doesn't matter what the Constitution say. I mean, I'm going to have my way. You have to stand up for your Constitution. You have to stand up for your democracy. I mean, you can't tell me that you're living in a democratic country and you don't want to stand for democracy, and somebody tell you it's not your business where I get this, or you're not your business. How can it not be your business? And then you have enablers, facilitators, feasting on the crumbs, and then trying to prevent people like Dr. Andre and Dr. George and Dr. Fontaine and Dr. Augustine from telling the truth to the poor people who are suffering and who continue to suffer under the system. Who do you think is bearing the brunt of this problem? It's the same very poor people, vulnerable people who are dependent on the system. So, Dr. George, I wanted to go over to you. I don't know if Dr. Andrew wanted to make a further comment before I go to you.
Well,
Oh, sure. Oh, go ahead, Dr. George. Sorry.
yeah, thank you, Dr. Andre. I mean, you can go ahead if you want to.
Well, again, therein lies the problem. You know, Dominicans have some wonderful sayings. One of them is "Si pani sutio, pani vole." You understand that?
I don't.
If hypothetically I'm in a room with money in that room, the money disappears. There's no evidence of forced entry. There's no broom overturned. There's no smell of asafoetida. So there's no evidence of any supernatural intervention. Then what reasonable inference can you draw from that evidence? Emoji
Supernatural.
boy, this is what we're dealing with. This is a matter of basic evidence. Who is depriving the state of its sustenance? The evidence is clear. This is what you have to deal with. We're not talking about doing anything illegal. We're talking about the rights. And there are persons who have a much stronger sense of religion than I have. But let me remind them of some of the sayings or some of the teachings of the good book. Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. Are you your brother's keeper, my friend? Are you prepared to speak truth to power? Are you prepared to uphold decency and honesty and integrity and generosity and magnanimity, even while you cling tenaciously to the coattails of illegal gains? Who are you setting an example for, my friend? Tell me. Huh? Who are you setting an example for? As I say, it's a good thing you were not a police officer.
Thank you, Dr. Andre. Dr. George?
Well, Mr. Gregoire, I think Dr. Thomson, Fontaine, and Dr. Andre, Dr. Simberg, Augustine touched on many things there. And I think in the thematic theme of what is tonight's program, this year in review, I mean, there's so many things we can talk about. We can talk about crime. We can talk about electoral reform. We can talk about several things. But on the issue at hand, Thomson mentioned something there. I think I want to comment a little bit about it. We're talking about electoral reform. And I heard him said something there, which in all fairness, we're having a conversation. I just want to revisit it. He says something to the effect that without electoral reform, we should not have election. Well, as a political scientist, I heard that last election, and I thought that was a mixed message. Something that if I were to advise anybody, I would have said that you need to have a clear message. Are you going to partake in the election? Or are you going to stay away from the election? So I heard my good senior brother Thomson says, we have to fix that. And I guess what I'm asking is, what is the, I don't know. I know part of this program is find recommendations to find ways of having a better country. And the better country doesn't mean to be openly against the government. It means to make a better country for the people of Dominica, period. That's it. So, without electoral reform, what are we going to do? We're going to sit by and stand by? I guess the big question is, who answers that question? Is it going to be the global view on Q with Lambie? Or is it going to be the Dominican people? How do we answer that question? Say, for example, I said another big question. When is the results of Sir Dennis Byron results coming out? Does it matter? The national radio station, where is the results? And when it does come out, what does it mean? What are the Dominican people willing to do? So who advise the general public, okay, have a forum, meet with people and talk about, okay, if the results come out and we do not get that, what should we do? Are there town halls, meetings from the opposition party? That if without electoral reform, what should be the actions? Are we preparing for this in the new year?
Well, let me try to help you. Let me try to help you out a little bit, Dr. George. All right. I did indicate that there is this movement called NJAM. I think Ken Vital is the chairman of that now, and several other people are on the executive. And what they have said is that they're resolved to make that their issue for this year. And I get a sense that they're saying it's been a long time since we've been talking about this thing, so we need to take some action so that, let us say, by June of this year, we will have had electoral reform and campaign finance reforms implemented. That is what I get a sense that they're saying. So they're looking at a date in 2022 when they want to have the implementation, not just to have a report from Sir Dennis Byron or from anybody. There are many reports already. They're saying we want to have this, what that means, and Dr. Andre can guide us a little bit more on that. They're prepared to take action to ensure that it's implemented. And what is implemented? That recommendations are made, that whatever legislation that has to be drafted is drafted, has to go to Parliament, get passed, and then you basically say, okay, here it is now that we have all of the rules, all of the laws, all the regulations, just like Jamaica, because Jamaica did it in 3 months. Antigua did it in 3 months, Dr.
Very
Andre.
quickly, yeah.
And
Yes.
so it's yes. Am I not right on that, Dr. Andre? I think Antigua did that in 3 months.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it's an Antigua. And Antigua is interested from our perspective because the then Attorney General of Antigua was a Dominican, Justin Simon. This is not rocket science. We are not talking about some wonderful or some intricately complex formula that someone like Dr. Augustine has to grapple with to ensure that we are all safe with this virus. It's been done before. It's been done in Jamaica. It's been done in Trinidad and Tobago. It's been done in Antigua. It's been done in Barbados.
St. Kitts.
St. Kitts. Meaningful electoral reform is not a mystery that is waiting to be undiscovered. It's there. But what makes it more egregious in terms of Dominica is there have been reputable reports regarding the contours of electoral reform. Whether it's the OS, whether it's this or the international body, whether it's the group of distinguished interest groups in Dominica led by Pastor Rodney, it's there. I was in a program a few weeks ago by an eminent man of the cloth. And the point being made is that we need more solutions. We've had enough solutions that would choke a horse. There are no solutions we need. Solutions are there. It could not be more obvious, but that is not the problem. The problem is not the lack of solutions. The problem is the unwillingness to put into effect solutions which could ensure that we take our rightful place in the family of democratic nations. That is the problem. Don't tell me about solutions. We're not talking about learning to make crabbacks, for God's sakes. We're not talking about some intricate thing. We're talking about making Johnny cakes, for God's sakes. It's a very simple process. But do we have the moral fiber? And if our leaders don't, then what are we doing? We'll see the Barbados elections. We'll see the democracy in action. We'll see how the people take seriously their rights to participate in the electoral process. We'll see their adamant resistance to any efforts to buy votes. That is what we need, the moral fiber to stand up. Stand up and say, we are something, nous sommes too. We have rights and we take our rights seriously. We are independent, intelligent persons. And that is what we stand for. Are we prepared to do that in 2022? Garçon, that's what, 40 something, 44 years after independence. With all the advances, private people are taking trips to the moon as if they were going to Miro. The technology has advanced so far. And yet you're telling me that we do not have the wherewithal to protect what Dr. Thomson correctly says is our most cherished possession. Well, second only to health, I should say. And I must express the caveat, given the pandemic. Therein lies the problem. Are we prepared to protect our second most cherished possession, which is our nation? Because that is where we will live. We may go abroad, as I have, inevitably we will return. That is the bottom line. And let me sound the caution to Dominicans. Hold on to your ancestral lands. Hold on to your family plots. Don't sell it for what? $10,000 today. And in 5 years' time, you will not even be able to go there. Hold on to what you have, because every indication is that there are dark clouds on the horizon where lands purchased in the name of development be sold to Abdullah from Kazakhstan. Mr. G, somebody told me he's your cousin. Put him down, Nick. And that is the fate that awaits us if we don't exercise diligence to protect that most cherished possession.
Yes, but Dr. Andre, before some of our cherished Dominicans can hold on to their properties, their prized possessions, their titles of their land, I mean, some of those who received houses, units, they to first get a title for them to hold on to. Not even that they have yet.
It's true. And that just underscores the point. These are beautiful. Can you believe that, for God's sakes? 15, 20, 25 years. Can you think of a beautiful apartment building in where? Castle Bruce, in the territories, bereft of titles. And in the Kalinago territory, there's a particular problem because we all know that one of the impediments to progress in the Kalinago territory is your inability to get a loan because you do not have individual title to the land. So when you're put into apartment building, with a little porch so you can hang a line, a clothesline, and you can borrow a tin to grow a little tomato, and hopefully you don't fall from the tomato tree. That is what is replacing your ancestral way of life. You are being dispossessed. Is that the development that you want, that you cherish? Is that the cherry that you're waiting to pick? Dispossessing your family, dispossessing those who had come before you. Because let's face it, typically in the countryside, the family plot is a plot that has been handed down from generation to generation. It is what guarantees you a modicum of independence. When you give that away, sell it, the next thing, what is growing on it is boy chow, bok choy, or God knows whatever it is, and so on. And you're living in your apartment with your little back porch with a clothesline hanging on because you can't hang your clothes anyway. Is that progress? Is that the progress we should embrace? While some of those who were close are buying up bit by bit, Roseau, Portsmouth, God knows wherever, phantom owners, trust arrangements, nowhere but Dominica. And why should Dominica be the last? Why should it only happen in Dominica? Why should there be electoral reforms recommended which would never be recommended in St. Kitts. Why should there even be a consideration of electoral reform without any addressing of one of the crucial problems, campaign finance reform? Why should it be? Because that is what brings in, that is what brings him, that is what erodes, that is the pourboire of the democracy. As long as it exists, it will eat inexorably away the very inner self of your own democracy. And you're telling me that your acolytes are calling and you're saying the same thing. Say it. Let's repeat the same thing. That is the message that we need to propagate among our people.
And there, here you are, Thomson. Here's what it is. We have seen the evidence. Without the campaign finance reform, without electoral reform, what we saw is that one political party had a whole set of treasury of money, a whole set of largesse, like a share, just money, right? And the others have nothing. And then what happened? Where did that money come from? Where did that big money come from? What is the interest of that big money in controlling our electoral system, in controlling the government that's elected, so that we can put that kind of money? How do they recover that kind of money? But here's we see what is happening. We hear about procurement acts, but then we hear that the builders and contractors saying, but what we had before in the procurement act was by far better than what we're getting now, and that what we're getting now appears to be in a better position to legitimize no-bid contracts. But how can there be no-bid contracts and the people who maybe are financing these elections are getting all the contracts? But we cannot even pronounce their names sometimes, and they have all these contracts, and we hear it our local contractors and our equipment owners saying we're not getting jobs. And they want to have a discussion with the government and say, look, we need to get jobs. These are local people who invested so much money, took loans and invested money in the equipment, and it's sitting idly by. And somebody else is bringing in equipment who was a foreigner and then taking all the jobs. Isn't this one of the good reasons why we need to have free and fair elections, campaign finance reform, to eliminate that big money that you don't know where it's coming from out of this thing, so that our local people can get the jobs, so that the money that comes from things like your CBI can filter for the various sectors like your agriculture, like your manufacturing, like your agribusiness. Maybe you get a couple of water bottling plants. All we hear now is hotels and hotels and hotels, right? And it is not getting down to the ordinary man. So the ordinary people now are waiting for an expired ham. I mean, my God, is that what Dominica has come to? We used to buy our own hams and turkey before at Christmas time. I mean, I'm sure Dr. Augustine remember those things. We used to be able to kill our chicken in our backyard and so on. We didn't have to wait for somebody to bring that for us. So, Thomson, here's what I'm saying. You see, Dr. George asked the question earlier. How is this thing going to happen to get this electoral reform? I think it is very easy. I remember in 1979, what happened is that the country made a resolve, you know something, we want this. It's a good thing for us to have, right? The country was concerned about making sure that our constitution prevails, that our laws prevail. We're not going to pass laws that are not good for us. The country wants to ensure that our democracy prevails. I think it's a good thing for any country to rally behind. I don't think that the church can say there is something wrong with standing up and taking action for democracy or for our constitution. I don't think the unions can say there is something wrong with that. I don't think that the private sector would say there's something wrong with standing for democracy and standing for our constitution. I don't think that the youth would say that. There is no sector that I can think of that would say that. So when NJAM says, gentlemen, we are resolved to ensure that let's do like Antigua and St. Kitts, and by June, let's get it implemented. So the next time we have an election, we'll know it's free and fair. We'll know that the OAS has sanctioned this, CARICOM has sanctioned it, all local people have sanctioned it. It is the right way to go. I don't think there should be any problem for NJAM to call on the unions and call on the private sector and call on the church, all of the institutions that rallied in 1979, calling them to stand up for action for a very good cause, which is the protection of our constitution and our democracy. What are your thoughts on that, Thomson?
You know, Sheridan, as you're talking, you know, I am thinking that we really don't need Justice Byron to tell us what we require. The laws, even as they exist, is sufficient and enough to give us free and fair elections. But the government has to do it. It has to be on the part of the government to say, well, yes, let us follow the rules. The problem that we have is that Roosevelt Skerritt has not followed the rules. He's on every turn, he's broken the rules that are supposed to govern our country. I mean, if you told me 20 years ago that I would see a Dominica where a foreigner would be entrusted with the resources that are supposed to be coming to the treasury, I would tell you that is not possible. If you were to tell me that foreign workers would flood into Dominica and our local people would just sit on the sideline and see foreigners getting the jobs that our own money is paying for, well, that is not possible. Yet that is what we have. This is the situation that we are faced with in Dominica. And until and unless we can get that change, that electoral reform that forms the very basis. And also I'm saying, but why should you be so fearful of this? After all, you use the electoral process to get into office. Why should you not safeguard that process, the sanctity of the process? What is wrong in ensuring that we have free and fair elections in Dominica? So the reverse of that, on the other side, is that people have to be prepared now to take matters into their own hands. And that is, Dion was asked, but that's what's going to happen, Dion. You're going to have a situation where, and we've seen it, as Sheridan said in the past, in 1979, we did it. In the census riots in 1844, Dominicans did it. We have a history of resistance. If you see my shirt, the Negmao, the proud Maroons of Dominica, we have a history of resistance, and we will resist this government. The people of Dominica will resist this government. And if it means going to the very end, as we did in 1979, to get the changes that we did, we will have it. So that we need to be very clear about this. We cannot allow our country, and the fear that Dr. Andre talked about, having a situation where, the Dominica is no longer owned by Dominicans. That your cherished land is sold to somebody that you don't know, with 23,000 something passports sold already. Who knows? Lands will no longer be owned by local businesses, will no longer be locally owned businesses. We really face the prospect of becoming strangers in our own land, on our own country. And for what? Just to fulfill the egoistic, narcissistic behavior of an individual who somehow believes that Dominica has been vetted to him, has been given over to him. For what? Why should Dominica have to suffer? Why should the majority of Dominicans have to suffer that fate? The threat of being sold to foreigners, the threat of a foreign takeover. Why should we have to suffer that fate? All only because we want one man to remain as Prime Minister of the country? Where else is that happening? Why should we accept that in Dominica? No other country is accepting this in the Caribbean region. Why is it that we're prepared to accept this in Dominica? And I think that's the mindset. That's the mindset that Dominicans need. And no matter what Skerritt has done, it looks like he has prepared his police officers, who are no longer police officers, but who are political officers, based on the way they conduct themselves, based on the way they conduct arrests, based on the way they harass the opposition. These are not police officers, but political officers. No matter what he prepares, I believe that the voice of the people of Dominica will be far greater, will be far stronger, and will overcome whatever it is that he has in place. Because we cannot accept, and we should never accept, that one individual is going to put the country to the place where we've lost all of our jobs, we've lost we've lost everything, that people have to be relying upon a ham donation at Christmas. I mean, come on, we are better than this. We are better than this. You know, and in fact, we should not even be buying ham from overseas. You know, the pigs that should be slaughtered and the cows that should be slaughtered during Christmas, fresh meat that we should be consuming. Yet we have been reduced to a people that I don't recognize, Sheridan or Irving or Dr. Dion. I don't know if you recognize Dominica. I certainly don't.
Well, what I can tell you, Thomson, today I went and get a haircut by Mr. Common Sergeant Major Ralph Alcenso. And I got a pigeon and I cut it neck and I prepared it. And
That's your ham.
That's
I say that to say that it reminded me of my dad. I remember when my dad was alive, a soul there as well. He always had pigs during Christmas, you know. So I want to give credence to the things that you are saying. That that why is it so difficult to have a processing plant? You know, I talk to Mr. Gregoire at times. He's a very, very intelligent man. And he always tells me, Dion, you teach political science, but he tells me, Dion, I like the private sector. He always believes that it's good that if government can work with the private sector to create industries outside of the government, and the government can enable them. And I think that speaks to what you are saying. And so when you talk about having the ham or having things, you know, I heard you on the program recently, and I must give you compliments for that as well. You know, you were in Dominica for a short space of time, and you work with some farmers. I think in where was that? In
the south. It was actually all over, but mainly in the south.
Yes. And I think you gave a number, kind of financial thing that you had for the farmers. But what struck me was just the short time that you were able to do that. And I said to myself, if someone has a ministry to deal with marketing for the private sector, let's say the farmers, and you're working on it every day, man, can you imagine the amount of things that could have happened? So I thought of that and I said to myself, man, this is not criticizing the government. This is looking better in the interest for Dominica. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. And but it's also okay to criticize, you know, because if the government is not doing right by the people, as you said, you know, and Dion, even that thing that I started, you know, you would think that a conscious government would have said, okay, Thomson, how can we work with you to improve on this? How can we work with you to guarantee that it is sustained? Because after all, right, you know, we are talking about the livelihoods of people, farmers being able to earn a living, to sell their shade and their tanner and the plantain and so on. Nothing of that sort. You know, so you have a government that's actually working against the interests of the people. And that to me is why I say I don't recognize this country. How can you have a government that is working so hard every day against the interests of the people it's supposed to represent?
I have a question from somebody on WhatsApp for Dr. Swinburne Augustine. But before I go to Dr. Augustine, and I know he'll be able to answer the question. It's an important question. But before I go to him, I wanted to just touch base a little bit again about something that somebody mentioned. I think you may have mentioned that, and Dr. Andre may have mentioned it as well, Thomson. But certainly in our show last night, with three powerful ladies, Dr. Swinburne Matthew, I had Ms. Cara Shillingford-Marsh, and I had Marcelin Edwards. And I remember very clearly that Ms. Cara Shillingford-Marsh said this: there are a number of cases in Dominica, and that fortifies what we're saying about the question of ownership. Because I mean, you know, everybody depends a little piece of land in here, a little backyard, you have your chicken and so, but you hand that over to your children when you're gone, right? And she was saying there are a number of cases now where people's lands have been acquired compulsorily and have not yet been compensated. And it's been a while. Now, I cannot understand for the life of me why that should happen to ordinary people who have a little piece of land somewhere, hoping they live for it. Maybe they might have sold it if they really wanted to. But the point is, if you acquire the land from them compulsorily by law, why not just pay the people for their land? And here is an attorney, a prominent attorney in Dominica, saying to us last night, there are several cases of that happening. And that tells us that some of what we're hearing is correct, because it seems as if there's just people who want land and just taking people's land. That is not a good thing for democracy. Because as we know, I mean, we know because we grew up that way. I mean, all of us grew up with a little home somewhere, a very modest little home, a little piece of land at the back. You grow pick your little chicken coop, you grow your chicken, you get your eggs, you get your white eggs, your brown eggs, and you can kill a little chicken now and then and make ends meet. So you don't have to go and beg or wait for no ham, and people have their pigs and their goats and so on. And we live that way. All of a sudden now people are losing the land and being put in units where they have no land around them to do anything. How can that work? So here's what I'm saying. I don't know whether Dr. Andre is able to come back. I know he's having some internet issues and he's trying to get back. But I mean, certainly I'm hoping that when he comes back in with us, he can speak to that question again, because clearly cannot be a good thing for people to be just their lands be acquired and they don't know when they're going to get paid. And you're talking about poor people. You're not talking about wealthy people, You're talking about poor people who really need the money to make ends meet. It just seems to me that it's kind of heartless for that to be happening. But Dr. Augustine, since we don't have Dr. Andrew, I don't know, unless Thomson, you wanted to make a comment on that in the absence of Dr.
Yeah,
Andrew.
no, absolutely. And I think very quickly, so that Dr. Augustine can come in, I think the problem that we have again is a government that really don't care about the people of Dominica. Because as we said, if you're taking the lands, if you're taking the people's lands because you claim it is for some public project, they must be compensated. And part of the project, the whole scope of the project must include payment for those lands. So if you're going to have a project, that is just automatic. That's the first thing. You should not take people, and in fact, people should just not just sit back, because the government are allowed to take your land on the premise that you are compensated. So if my land was taken and I'm not compensated, I go back and occupy my land. That's all they have to do. People have to begin to go into civil disobedience to force this government, because you're literally stealing from the people. How can you have a project like an airport and you don't have the monies to pay people's lands that you're taking over? It defeats all kind of logic.
I want to go over to Dr. Andre quickly, but as I do, I want to just alert Lambi. Lambi, I know a number of people have been trying to call. People have been sending me a lot of WhatsApps and say, listen, we're trying to get in and we're not getting through. And Lambi, take a couple of calls so you can interrupt us if we start again. And, give the people a call, give the numbers, take a couple of calls, Lambi.
Good evening. The numbers are 449-3095-9697, 305-432-9624, 616-4257, and we do have a caller on the line. Caller, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Lamy. Good evening,
Good evening,
brothers
sir.
and distinguished gentlemen. Lamy, is it possible to have an interaction with Dr. Swinburne?
Well, you can go through Mr. Gregoire. He'll decide that.
Yeah, well, we're going to go to Dr. Swinburne in a minute, but if the caller wants to just take a minute and do that, we could do that, but we're already looking. But if the caller wants to go ahead and take a minute to interact with Dr. Swinburne, we can do that.
Yeah, I would. I want to ask Dr. Swinburne from a scientific perspective. For question number one, why are people who have been contracted the virus surviving? Why are they being forced to be vaccinated when a vaccination essentially simulates, an experience? Why is it necessary that they're vaccinated? And secondly, the Omicron. It's not a dangerous variant. It seems like something we're going to have to live with. Why is boosters being created against a mild virus? Isn't that going to lead us to create more virulent strains? So I would like to ask him to address those two questions sometime.
Yeah, well, certainly we'll ask Dr. Augustine to take a note of that. And these two, because I have another one for him as well. So very good questions, caller. Very, very good questions. And I will ask Dr. Dr. Gus, take a note. I have another one to ask him as well. But Dr. Andre, very quickly, I was just hoping that you could make a comment on this. You know, because property is such an important thing. Because most people, most Dominicans who go overseas, Dr. Andre, as you know, the most important thing for them to do, tighten their belt, make the sacrifice, put a little down payment on a house, get a house, you pay for it over 20 years. When you develop some, collapse some little thing in the thing, you sell it and then you get a better one. And eventually, when you're ready to retire, which is what people do in England, in Canada, and so on, you sell, then you have enough money. If you have a piece of land or you have your home, you move to Dominica, you start spending your retirement, then spending money there. But when Dr. And Ms. Cara Shillingford Marsh told us last night on our show that she has cases where several people, their lands were acquired and they have not been paid up to now. What are your thoughts on that in the context of what you were talking about, the question of ownership of property?
Well, think of Dominica's history. Think of our history of slavery. Think about the what happened in the decades following the emancipation. Think of the struggles for the peasantry to be able to acquire lands which would give them a modicum of independence, subsistence. Think of Leblanc's revolution in the 60s, which enabled Dominicans to cultivate their holdings, to grow bananas, to be able to send their children to school. Think of the centrality of land ownership to the West Indian experience, something which has been highlighted in the literature of the region. Think of V.S. Naipaul's book, A House for Mr. Biswas. Think of Jean Reese's White Sargasso Sea, where after her heroine was locked in some Thornfield Hall in England, she literally burnt down the place to be spiritually united with her island. Think of another work by Elena John, if I recall the name, called Unburnable, where again the heroine, in a very symbolic way, sought to be reunited with the country of her birth. That has been the centrality of the experience of Dominicans and West Indians, as a matter of fact, to their little piece of earth, their little paradise. So when you give this away, let me ask you now, Mr. G, you are a learned man, you are a man of the world. When you give the Chinese unrestricted ability to come to your island, what are they coming for? Tutulu crabs? What exactly is it that you think they're coming for? Coming for jobs. Think of it. We're talking China. We're in Dominica. Dominicans are unemployed to a significant degree. And yet you are bringing these folk, these Trojan horses, to compete with your own people for limited jobs, limited opportunities. That is a very abortion of the future of Dominica, of the future livelihood of the Dominican people. When you flood your island, and somebody might say, Andre, you don't know what you're talking about. Dominicans can go to China to do what? Huh? To shop? If they can afford the airfare? And bear in mind the history of how racialized individuals have been treated in China over the decades. So what exactly do you have in mind when you seek to alter the genetic makeup of the island in such a fundamental fashion, whether from an economic perspective or biological perspective, or from a perspective of who is considered, who is in fact a Dominican citizen? Which, Mr. G, you know better than me. And let me tell you in advance, please don't mention the name Lacuset Lang. But which other island in the Eastern Caribbean has adopted such a policy? They haven't, because they understand. In 62, Jamaicans were fearful of being flooded by West Indians, for God's sakes. And that was one of the primary reasons why they backed out of the Federation. The Trinidadians, They were prepared to accept unrestricted intra-regional migration, but only if the manufactured goods they were producing found a market throughout the Caribbean. When the market was not forthcoming, particularly because of Jamaican opposition, they decided to start repatriating West Indian migrants commencing in November of 1959. And that also drove another stake in the heart of Federation. So when you bring in these workers, these tourists who are coming to look at your Tutulu crabs, what do you think is the impact on your country? What do you tell me, Mr. G? You know better than I.
Well, what I want to say is this, that first of all, I'm getting a lot of WhatsApp messages. Lambi, you better take the people's calls, huh? Because I'm, you know, while you're setting up to take the calls, give the people the numbers, Lambi. Let them know they can call now, and we're going to just take the calls because so many people are saying they're trying to get through and they're not getting. Go right ahead, Lambi.
The numbers are 449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. And we're taking your calls right now. There is someone on the line. Please go ahead.
Why is this program so boring?
449-3095, 449-3096, 449-3097, 616-4257, 305-432-9624. Go ahead, Mr. Green. Mr. G, go ahead with the call. Let's the call right now. Go ahead, caller.
Yeah, good evening, Lambi.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening to the entire panel.
Good evening.
Mr. G, I have a few questions, quick questions, all are directed to Dr. Augustine. Dr. Augustine, I know Can I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead.
I was saying Dr. Augustine is a very popular man.
You are here on this program for this scientific aspect of this program. But as a Dominican, what are your thoughts on proper electoral reform? That's number one. Number two, after we take the booster shot, will we be taking more shots? Number three, the last time you were on the program with Dr. Defoe had some concerns, future concerns, when she said that her concern was after 6 months, the vaccine will become a variant and we're going to get accustomed to vaccine. Can you explain that to us tonight, if you can, please? And number four, there's a doctor from Trinidad, Dr. McDowell. I don't know if you have his video. If not, I can settle something so you could get some of them. The information he's giving us on the vaccine, these information, are they true or false? Good night.
So, Lambi, do you have any more calls before I let Dr. Augustine attempt? All right. So, Dr. Augustine, you're a very popular man tonight. I know you've answered some of those questions already, but here is another one I want to add to the whole thing you have, because you seem to be a guy who's a magnet for questions. Now, here's somebody asking, ask Dr. Augustine if he's aware of what are some of the best practices that St. Kitts is doing that we are not doing in Dominica, as it is noted that St. Kitts is now moving towards an 80% plus herd immunity. So they want to know whether you are aware of what St. Kitts is doing that we're not doing in Dominica, that St. Kitts is not only are they 80% plus, but they're giving stimulus packages and all kind of things and double bubbles. So maybe you can answer. You have 3 or 4 questions now to answer, Dr. Augustine.
Yeah, I have about 7 questions to answer.
Oh boy.
That's okay. That's all right. So let's go with the first caller who he asked 2 questions. Why are they asking people, or are we asking people to get vaccinated after you've had infection with COVID, a natural infection? Well, normally, and I will qualify that word normally, because we are in really abnormal times. Abnormal in the sense that scientists are actually learning what happened with this SARS-CoV-2? It has learned over time how to survive at our expense. We let down the ball. And so what normally would happen if you're infected with something, yes, you would gain immunity. You would gain some immunity. But what we started noticing with COVID-19 is that people were getting reinfected over and over again. Two things about COVID-19 that determines its severity is viral load and time of exposure. Almost like radiation, right? How much radiation you get, what radioactive dose you got, and secondly, how long were exposed to that radiation will determine the severity of your health or the health of the public. Same with COVID-19. If you were, say, for hours hanging out in a big old crowd and COVID is all over the place, you are taking in millions and millions of viral particles. All of those viral particles, those millions of them, are getting into millions of your lung cells. And when they get in and replicate inside of those lung cells, they have to come out. When they come out, they're destroying the ones that they were in, and they are going into other lung cells and destroying those as well. And the process repeats over and over, and it's very short periods. As we can see with Omicron, it's now 3 days. The incubation period, you start getting symptoms within 3 days, you're infectious within 3 days. So noticing that, observing that people were getting reinfected once, twice, 3, 4 times after getting a natural infection. So, when people got vaccinated, that was not happening. And I mean, you get infected, but you don't get seriously ill. Something about the way the vaccines work and trigger your immune system causes the virus not to be able to replicate. I mean, not to be able to really replicate inside of you, because like I said, it has to come out. So if I threw a billion grains of sand at you, I don't care how much you duck, some of them are going to hit you. Now, if 10 or 100 grains of sand hit you, that's fine. Because once they get in and they try to come out, the sharks, like in Mero Beach, are going to destroy them. That means you don't have anything else to pass on. Only what's in your bronchial tubes and in your nostrils you can give out on your clothes. So that's the first one. So we've noticed, and there are studies after studies that are showing that yes, you do get some protection from natural infection, but it's not strong enough. We still have to figure out why is that? Why is SARS-CoV not acting like the rest? And that's all part of the work that we're doing. So that's why we recommend in vaccines. Now, the caller asks also, why boosters if Omicron is not so serious? Again, I would say all what we know about Omicron so far, the papers are in preprint, meaning that scientists like me have not yet reviewed them for publication, right? So when I write a paper, I have a choice. I can put it on a preprint server where other scientists will look at it and make comments, and I can, I would naturally take those comments, look at them, and try to modify my paper while it is getting ready to go through the review process. So it's a really good way to have other people looking at that same paper, but they're looking at it from different angles, and they may be able, and that is part of the whole beauty of what we do in science, is that someone may have, because of their expertise or their experience, may have some information you don't have. And so they may help you to craft your paper to make it more solid and more factual. So that's and Dr. George, he has PhD at Thomson. They both understand that review process is very critical. So Omicron so far is not so serious, but Omicron is very, very infectious, about 70 times more than Delta. So the other reason why we need the boosters is that Omicron is not the only one out there. Delta is still there. The United States today, the CDC had to revise their numbers, and it came from 73% to 59% of the population in the United States now. The number of new cases, 59% of them are Omicron. So there are 41% left. Delta. We're not through. We're not out of the woods yet. So that's why we should take the booster. And it's not, to me, okay, yes, companies are making money. People are making money of that, but that's not the thing for me. The thing for me is that after 56 days, the naturally immunity starts to wane, because our bodies cannot stay in overdrive for too long. If you keep your car in overdrive for a long time, it will seize that engine, it will destroy your car. So the immune system cannot stay at a high level for a long time. Nothing, because our bodies are meant to stay in balance. Anything that is up or down is going to cause problems. Diabetes, too much sugar in your blood. It's sugar. We need sugar for our cells to work. That's where we get energy. But too much, and the body cannot use it. So it's just sitting there in a pool, a bassin of sugar, and it's going to kill you. So same way. So we need to keep the antibodies. We have to push the body, our bodies, to stay near overdrive with antibodies against COVID, so that the 2 weeks, the 1 to 2 weeks that it takes for us to build back that immunity to fight it with the antibodies we got from the vaccines, we don't want, especially in older people or people that have pre-existing conditions that predisposes them to severe outcomes and death. We don't want that. So we want to keep it up. That's why the boosters. Okay.
Now, Dr. Augustine, we loaded you up with 7 questions. I know you're going to do your best to answer, but I believe some of your answers are covering more than one.
Yes.
Here's what we have to remember, that we only have a few minutes left. We've already gone over, but I really want you to answer those questions. Try your best to do what you can within, as quickly as you can, so we can wrap up,
So sure. So the next caller asked about proper electoral reform. Electoral reforms are always good anywhere, but here's what I'm going to say. And here is my disclaimer that I forgot to give at the very beginning. I am here I'm not representing the US EPA or the federal government. I'm doing this in my own personal capacity. However, I am still an employee of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And when it comes to the politics of other people, in person, we can talk. I cannot get involved in politics at all. I would much rather that stay somewhere else. They've given me permission to talk about the virus and to educate the public, so that I will do. One-on-one, we can talk about that. So proper electoral reform is always good. Anytime you want to know that there are free and fair elections anywhere, including in the United States, where we having problem. Now I can talk about it in the United States because that's where I am. We have problems and we have to work them. We are working through them. Now, vaccine variants. I mean, you talk about the vaccine. It's not a vaccine variant. The variants are not caused by the virus, but the vaccines can put pressure, which is what Dr. Gale was talking about, Dr. Defoe. It puts downward pressure on the virus to try to destroy it and stop it. Anytime you put pressure down on something, it's going to try to find a way to weasel its way out of it. The virus's way to weasel its way out is to try to mutate, to try to be like a snake changing its skin so that you don't recognize it. It is part, we do that. All animals do that. Viruses, they do it very well. Bacteria do it too, because if you notice that penicillin used to wipe out everything. Nowadays, most of the antibiotics don't work on bacteria because they're getting antibiotic resistance. That's a problem that the World Health Organization and other countries have noticed, and we're going to work through that. That's where the variants are. And the important point about this is that the variants are only happening inside of unvaccinated people. The video from Trinidad, yes, I saw it. We've been at this for 1.5 years. I don't need to look at another person's video. All I need to do is to look at the number of dead people and to know that more than almost 6 million of my fellow world people, 45 plus of my Dominican people are dead. And we are definitely now in a pandemic of the unvaccinated. People don't like that. They don't like that terminology, but it's true. You call a spade, and that's where we are. Vaccinated people, yes, there are breakthrough infections, like I explained earlier, but when you vaccinated, and I know I feel safe because, and I still practice my hand hygiene and social distancing and my masking, but I feel a lot safer than I was before the vaccines came out. Video from Trinidad, you know what? Just look at the numbers. All of us here are vaccinated. I don't see anything. I don't glow in the dark. I don't see the mark of the beast. None of that. I just know I'm safe and the people around me are safe. What are the best practices in St. Kitts? Well, you know, we can talk about stimulus packages. We can talk about all of that. None of that will do any good without being vaccinated. I'm coming back to the same thing. I'm like a one-track mind person with this. I want to save your life. I want to help save your life. We've been getting vaccines for polio, smallpox, measles, mumps, rubella, all of those things. I even remember we were getting croup and all that stuff and thrush when we were growing up. The vaccines work. They are not some kind of nefarious thing to control the world or to kill us. I would, if I wanted to do that, I would do it in your air or your water. You must drink water, I know that. I don't have to give you an injection for that. And there are things that you can do to contaminate. It is. That's part of our job at where I work. to look for contamination from businesses and from the environment itself and our behavior that will kill us from the environment. So what is St. Kitts doing? Whether they give stimulus packages, whether they give turkey ham, no, it doesn't matter. What they're doing, that 80%, that important 80% you talk about, is that they're getting their people to get vaccines. And that is what we need. We need to put all our energy, just like the first caller who asked about the boosters and Omicron. He said he had a genuine question, and I will answer genuine questions. Even ones that are not very genuine, it is my duty to my country and to my fellow human beings. Some of us, to whom much is given, much is required. I have been given and blessed with the knowledge to understand immunology, to understand the virus, to understand science, to understand the process of publishing science and reviewing it before it's published for others. So I want to give that blessing to my country. Okay, so that's I hope I have answered it. And
Well,
Dominicans, please get vaccinated.
I think you did a great job. I mean, as we wind down, so we can go around the table. Somebody asked me, please ask Dr. Augustine, how long after contracting the virus is one contagious and can affect someone else? If you can do that very quickly for us.
Yes. So that is the thing with Omicron, and I mentioned that earlier. They may have missed it. With Omicron, is 3 days. When the first one came out, that's why the quarantine was 14 days. It was 10 to 14 days. And then with Delta got quicker, and Delta was 5 to 7 days. Omicron is now at 3 days. 3. That's why now it doesn't even make sense to quarantine you for 2 weeks, because you will start to show symptoms and you will start to be contagious within 3 days. 3.
Well, thanks a lot for that, Dr. Augustine. I mean, we've already overstayed, as everybody knows. I mean, but, I want to go around the table there because, Thomson, we covered so much. Dion, we covered so much. I'm assuming that this was Dr. Augustine's sort of closing up remarks. But Dr. George, I wanted to go to you to see if you can give us any final thoughts on your closing remarks as we try to wind down. You want to unmute your mic.
Yes, I was saying, I think this global view in review, I think it was a very good idea. I think you had a few series. You had a program last night. You had one on Sunday, I believe. And tonight with Dr. Swinburne Augustine, with Dr. Thomson Fontaine, Dr. Andre, I really wish we could have had the public to interact more, but I mean, the amount of things we were talking about is so much, we could not engage the public. But I really want to thank you so much for the global view on Q. So tonight on the topic of electoral reform, the whole idea about the recommendations moving forward. I mean, myself and Thomson talked about it, and Thomson was very frank and very direct. And I mean, I asked a question and Thomson answered me. He says, something has to happen, that Dominica really do need some change where that is concerned. And I'm very thankful for that. I mean, Dr. Andre spoke about the justice system. Of course, Dr. Swinburne Augustine really dealt with the whole COVID virus. And there are a lot of people in Dominica, even myself, who asked questions. And I think he did a very, very, very competent job about dealing with that. And so I think as we are closing up the year, I want the public to hear that this program, at least from my perspective, is one that is informative, is one that looks to uplift our public, to help our people. And I hope this coming year that the recommendations like persons like Dr. Augustine and Dr. Andre and Dr. Thomson Fontaines are giving are things that could be considered by the government, and that they would see this program as one that is very, very, very well researched, well informative, that the public will appreciate the information that they're getting, because that's what it is. And so I want to leave on a good note as the year ends, in the spirit of Advent, in the spirit of how I heard Dr. Swinburne Augustine singing, "Oh, Holy Night." It was so good to hear him sing that. I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity over these few months to partake in such, I think, an uplifting and noble cause. And so good night, Thomson. Good night, Andre. Good night, Swinburne, Sheridan, Lambie, to my listening public. We are closing the year. We had a year in review. I mean, so much to talk about. But we talk about some points there tonight, and I really think it was healthy. And so I just want to leave my blessings and ask God to bless us as we go to our beds. God bless you, and good night. Thank you.
Excellent. But you know, you had to go and do that. You see, you had to go and mention Dr. Swinburne Augustine and Oh Holy Night. So now you forced me to say, Dr. Augustine, you're going to have to say something finally there, just to wind up quickly, because you're a big star of the night. You're singing all kind of things.
Put on your mic.
Sing Holy Night to everybody.
Well, thank you, Dr. George. Thank you, Sheridan. And I just want to say, I knew and I've heard, read Dr. Andre's books, some of them, and I have heard about it. And I knew him. I mean, I knew him when we were in Goodwill, when we were going to school, but he was senior. He was our senior. While Thomson and I were still in first form at SMA. Lambie, I know Lambie from Pottersville. So I want to wish everybody a very, very safe and enjoyable New Year. Be safe, please, because Omicron is fast. If you're not vaccinated, it will get into you quicker, and Delta is still there. So we have multiple variants that are circulating. Please be careful. Don't take any chances. Don't bring it home to your elderly people. Get the elderly people vaccinated. And Thomson and I have had several conversations about that. I was on his show, but my passion is just please. The virus is here, and we may be at a point, depending on our behavior, where we have to live with SARS-CoV just like we do with the flu, and may have to get shots. And the person asked how many boosters we're going to get. The reason why, the boosters are spaced out, because it falls, the effectiveness of the vaccines, they wane. So we want to keep it up. And since Omicron is making life difficult for us, that it's shortened the 6-month period. It's about 3 to 4 months now that we are getting some protection from the virus before it starts to wane. If we need to get vaccinated so we can stop that thing in its track and not let it change. Yeah. And my love to all of you in Dominica and all of you on the panel, Lambie and the producers, I want to wish you all a very safe New Year. It was very nice being with all of you tonight. It's nice to meet you all.
Well, I didn't insist that you sing Holy Night, but maybe next time we'll look at that. Thomson, I wanted to go over to you. Any final thoughts, Thomson, before we say goodbye?
Yeah, well, just to express my own personal thanks to you, Mr. G, and to Lambie, and to Sheridan and all the others at Q as well. Of course, to Dr. Andre, Dr. Swinburne, thanks for the great work you continue to do. We have a great Dominican there who is doing a lot of good stuff. He did not get a chance to tell us about the work that he did in research, this great research that he has done, and in fact contributed Mr. G, you know, which I find is really great, contributed to the processes of testing that we have now for the, you know, for the virus. So, you know, here we have Dominicans doing great things, and it's such an honor to be on this. And of course, Dion, you know, to see his interest, and in fact, I was able to reach out to him as well. And Dr. Andrew, as always, you know, just always so much on point. And so, but I want to speak in this 1 minute to the Dominican public, Mr. J. I think, you know, we allow sometimes our own selves, we see things in other people, in other countries, and we feel to see it in ourselves. I remember when Donald Trump was trying his funny things in the elections in the United States, Dominicans were up in arms. You could swear it was Dominica that was being, you know, troubled. Oh, you know, Mr. Trump, this Trump, this, and then these very same people will not utter a word when Roosevelt Skerritt attempts to steal an election. This is called hypocrisy. We don't want it for America. We should not want it for Dominica. And I think as all right-thinking Dominicans, we should simply ask for one thing. Roosevelt Skerritt, just do the right thing. Just allow free and fair elections. You're such a popular leader. You're such a great leader. People will re-elect you. What are you afraid about? Do not continue to steal elections. Do not continue to put Dominicans under pressure. Do not continue to harass young activists, as we saw happen last week with the Moon Way, where our police officers have lost their way. They're no longer fighting crime, but they're busy, you know, acting as political officers to, you know, guarantee and sustain. Everywhere we've seen this happen. Every country where we've seen police officers act in the interest not of the country but of the politician, this country has gone down the tubes. Dominica will be no exception. We still have enough time to correct ourselves. We still have enough time to fix those problems. But I believe those of us in Dominica, people of clear conscience, should be able to stand up and speak truth to power. Ultimately, if we allow our country to go down the tubes, we all lose. We all lose. We need to do what we can to ensure democracy, to ensure that we have a free and fair election in the next round of election, and to ensure that people are free to dissent, people are free to express themselves without fear or contradiction, that they're not fearful of speaking truth to power. Let us have a free Dominica. Let's have a Dominica where Dominicans enjoy their country. Dominica first. The jobs go to Dominicans. The opportunities go to Dominicans. The billions of dollars come back in Dominica's treasury that we'll use to develop Dominica. Let us ask for these basic common sense things. And let us pray that in 2022, we'll see a better Dominica. We'll see a more focused Dominica. And we'll see a Dominica where next Christmas, we're not talking about expired ham, but we're talking about people's abilities to put food on their tables and to support their families. God bless everyone, and I wish every Dominican a happy new year and the very best in 2022.
Great job, Thomson. Great job. And Dr. Andre, you have the final word.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mr. G. Let me compliment our distinguished panelists. Let me commend Dr. Thomson Fontaine for his wonderful book. Let me thank Dr. George for his book, which I'm looking forward to read. Let me thank Dr. Augustine for the work he's done. In fact, he's convinced me that the recipe that someone sends to me is not something I should not go on that path. I would rather look at the cup as being half filled as opposed to half empty. In fact, I feel this Christmas, you know, because of the unequal distribution of goodies, many people didn't get their little assignments of ham and of goat and of turkey. I took a lot of courage and encouragement from the person who sent me a WhatsApp message telling me that because they didn't get either goat or turkey, they had to basically transition the little goat they had in their yard. And their wife did such a wonderful job cooking the goat. That the fellow told his wife, would you please go and cook the rope that had tied the goat to a glory cedar tree? So in lieu of the turkey and the thing, he enjoyed that and he was quite happy. And yes, Dr. Augustine has sung this wonderful Holy Night, but I will be singing that song of, I think it was one of the, I can't remember the name of the artist. I can see clearly now that the rain is gone. I can see all the obstacles in my way. It's going to be a bright sunny day. And I think, as I said, this is the time that we have to dip within. We have to realize those wonderful attributes and potential that we have. We have to realize that charity begins at home. We have to realize that we are the agents of change. We have to realize that there will be no white shining horse riding into the horizon to rescue us from anything. And we have to realize that salvation rests within each and one of us. So that is the last message I will leave Mr. G, to your wonderful listeners. Thank you all.
Yes, and it looks like the wonderful listeners are returning the compliments to you as well, Dr. Andre. As Dion told you, these people in Salisbury love you. I think Dominicans all over Dominica love you. And as a matter of fact, I have to say that. Was that? But nonetheless, I have to thank Dr. George. I have to thank Dr. Swinburne Augustine. I have to thank Dr. Thomson, Fontaine, and you, Dr. Andre, and all of our wonderful listeners across the globe and in every nook and cranny, in every community in Dominica for listening and paying attention what we're doing tonight, what we've done over the past few nights on the Global View on Q. And we get all this feedback from everybody. We're so grateful for that. But tonight, I just wanted to in thanking everybody and wishing everybody a terrific new year, because this is our last Global VNQ show for this year, 2021. I just wanted to leave this thought very quickly, gentlemen, which is that it is time for Dominicans to fearlessly stand for the Constitution and stand for your democracy. I mean, whatever action is being taken, that is the interest of protecting and preserving your Constitution and your democracy. It does not matter what sector you are, whether it's a religious sector, whether it is the banking sector, or whatever sector you are, the unions. It is good to stand for your Constitution. This does not mean you have to be against any political party. That is really out of the question. That's nothing to do with politics or political party or partisan politics. It has to do with our values, right? What we stand for, our constitutional democracy. And it comes down, when you translate that, what it comes down to is the interest of every little person, every ordinary person. We talked about where the person might lose a piece of land, which is the only thing that they have to live for their children. They have a little home where they live. They can say, okay, when I pass on, I want to leave that for my kid, my next of kin. These things are so important. This is what we've always known. That's our culture. That's how we've lived. And Dominicans continue that. When we go overseas, we try to tighten our belt, we save money, put a little deposit, get a little house, and later on, as the equity increases, we sell it, we do something, we come home. That's what all these English people do. They come home, they buy a piece of land, build a nice house, and they live and spend the money in Dominica. This is what we stand for. And I'm saying, listen, if we do not protect our Constitution, if we do not preserve our democracy, we will lose all of that. Because what is going to happen, we will not have free and fair elections. What that means is that big money interests are going to come in there, influence our campaigns, put a lot of money into one party or the other. They get in there and then they have to work for the big interest that keeps putting them in there and not for the people. Because this big interest, their interest is not synonymous with the interest of the little man. And that is why all of it is translating into jobs really not going to the locals. I mean, the contracts not going to the locals. So I just want to say, everybody, I mean, have a great new year. And for 2022, let's try to insist that we have electoral reform and campaign finance reform, which will ensure that we protect our democracy and our Constitution. Gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for us being here tonight, and thank every one of you who's been on Facebook and everywhere listening to us. Thank you, Lambi. Thank you, Sherwin. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and I hope everybody has a terrific new year.
Thank you.
Good
Thanks.
night.
Take care.
Thank you. Good evening.
Happy
All
New
right,
Year.
Thomson and Irving and Swinburne and Dion. Take care.
To you too. Thank
Take
you.
care.
All right.
To all of
Okay,
you.
excellent. Good night.